Chapter 1761. One of the two shops sold spirit pills. This was easy to handle. Shui Yuan was in charge of the pill gourd, so she could refine any spirit pill she wanted. Moreover, the medical cultivators on the island could refine their own spirit pills and sell them in the pharmacy to earn some extra income. The second shop sold twin chi-connected formation discs. This was going to be troublesome for Lu Yi because no one else on the three-world island could refine them except for him. Lu Yi didn't reject the idea because he knew that every formation disc he refined was a source of income. The investment was small, but the income was large. Back when he was in the Wanxiang Sea, he had earned his first sum of spirit jades by auctioning the twin spirit-connected formation disc. He had earned more than 100 million spirit jades. If it were any other cultivator, they would not have to worry about their cultivation for the rest of their lives. However, he had spent 100 million spirit jades in just a few years. The main reason was that he consumed too much spirit jades when he cultivated. The talent tree burned spirit jades. Now that the price of formation discs had stabilized, it was about 3,000 spirit jades each. He had only invested a little, and he had earned less than 50 spirit jades in materials. It was still a profitable business. He had to make use of the time he had to refine more formation discs. After the three-world island stabilized, he would attempt to break through to the mid-stage Moon Jade realm. 10 days passed in a flash. On the day of the opening of the island, the entire three-world island was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Luan Xiao, He Baichuan, Yen Miao, Ma Shangxi, Tang Jun, and the others gathered together and looked at the situation outside the island. They felt their scalps go numb. This was because the situation had exceeded their expectations. At this moment, at least tens of thousands of cultivators had gathered at the ferry outside the island. One had to know that these were all constellations. Although they had been in the 10,000 Elephant Sea for some time, they had never seen so many cultivators gathered together. Moreover, there were many ships outside the gathering place. From time to time, Yu Yao's aura would leak out from those ships. There were several hundred of such ships. Although they had known that the opening of the three-world island would be very lively, no one had expected it to be this lively. However, everyone knew that one of the reasons for this was that the three-world island had stirred up a huge commotion. Many people naturally wanted to come to the island out of curiosity. Secondly, the five-colored Chamber of Commerce's auction had attracted a lot of people, especially Yu Yao, who had come to participate in the auction. Thirdly, when a spiritual island opened for the first time, all the major businesses on the island would cooperate with the island and offer some discounts. These discounts would usually last for 10 days to half a month. This was a way of making small profits but selling quickly. This would undoubtedly attract many low-level cultivators to come and shop for the items they wanted. What a big scene! He Baichuan stared ahead, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. According to the division of duties, from today onward, he would be stationed at the ferry port. In other words, the first person any cultivator who arrived at the three-world island would see would be him. He Baichuan was under a lot of pressure from having to receive so many guests at once. Tang Jun comforted him, "Don't worry, old He, you'll be in charge of the ferry. You just need to pay attention to the majority of the people." He Baichuan nodded. "Old Tang, you've experienced this before. If there's anything wrong, remember to remind me." Sure. Tang Jun nodded repeatedly, roaring in his mind. He had never experienced such a big scene before. Back when the Peerless Island opened, the scene was much smaller. After all, the Peerless Island was much smaller than the three-world island, so the number of people it could accommodate was naturally different. However, he was more experienced than others, so he could only force himself to remain calm at this time. Tang Jun turned to Ma Shangxi and said, "So many people have come all of a sudden, and they're all from the star constellations. Pay attention to the patrols. Any disputes have to be resolved quickly. Turn big problems into small ones and small ones into nothing. We definitely can't cause a commotion." Tang Jun was in charge of the overall situation, while He Baichuan was stationed at the ferry port, and Ma Shangxi was in charge of patrolling the island. For today, the thousands of cultivators on the island had split into over 200 small teams, and they were all led by Ma Shangxi. This was to deal with any disputes that might arise. Ma Shangxi nodded and said, I understand. She secretly decided that if there were really people who were blind enough to cause a dispute on the island, she would send a sea of blood over and let them fight in the sea of blood. At that time, it would definitely not affect others. Fellow Taoist Luan, you're the first island master. There are many Yu Yao participating in the auction today, so you'll have to take care of all of them when the time comes. There will be people from the 5-color island who will cooperate with you at the auction. Luan Xiaoa said, It's my duty. What should I do? Yan Miao asked. Ma Shangxi said, Fellow Taoist Yan Miao, you'll be stationed at the 2nd ferry port. I'll send some people over to assist you. There were several ferry ports on the island, but today's situation was special, so only 2 were open. One was for entry, and the other was for exit. He Baichuan was stationed at the entry port, while Yan Miao was stationed at the exit port. It was the port with the least pressure. While everyone was talking, at the center of the 3-world island, Lu Yi and Bai stood side by side on top of the tall building of the 5-color merchant guild's branch. They were looking at the bustling scene outside the island. Since the 5-color merchant guild's branch was holding an auction today, Bai naturally had to personally oversee it. Brother, after today, the 3-world island has completely stabilized its position. In the future, I'll have to rely on you to take care of the branch. Lu Yi said, No problem. I'll also have to thank you for your assistance earlier. Bai Zhen waved his hand and said, I didn't help much. Moreover, from the looks of it, opening a branch here was a wise decision. The merchant guild has profited from this. He paused for a moment, then lowered his voice and said, Brother, sell me a few bottles of that supreme-grade spirit refining pill later. Lu Yi smiled. It's a small matter. I'll have someone send it over later. Bai laughed and patted Lu Ye's shoulder. Then I'll thank you in advance. Just as they were talking, a loud voice suddenly rang out. It was Tang Jun's shout. Open the island! The great formation of the commercial district buzzed, and a gap opened at the ferry port. In an instant, the crowd that had been waiting for a long time swarmed in. Looking from above, the crowd was like a flood, rushing into the island through the gap and quickly dispersing. On both sides of the island streets, many merchants who had already prepared beforehand opened their doors and warmly welcomed the crowd. After this period of excitement, the 3-world island would gradually return to normal. Under normal circumstances, cultivators who entered the spiritual islands would register at the ferry port and then be issued a token. With this token, they could stay on the island for a period of time. Some spiritual islands would even charge a certain fee as a restriction on entering the island, such as the island of Myriad. However, there were simply too many guests today, so this matter was skipped. Right now, the most important thing was for the guests to enter the island as quickly as possible. Moreover, the 3-world island did not intend to charge a fee for entering the island. The island of Myriad had the right to do so, but the 3-world island did not for the time being. Even though tens of thousands of people did not register, it still took more than 2 hours for all of them to enter the island at the ferry port. The vast 3-world island immediately became bustling with activity. The figures of cultivators entering and exiting the various large shops could be seen everywhere. Only now did the Yu Yao appear at a moderate pace. Luan Xiaoa personally received them, and they were then led to the Rainbow Merchant Guild's branch. Once they arrived, the Rainbow Merchant Guild's people would naturally take over the arrangements. More than 200 cultivators on the island shuttled through the various streets, patrolling the area and guarding against any unforeseen circumstances. Indeed, there were some conflicts, but the patrolling teams would quickly come forward to deal with them. The 3-world island only had one attitude towards those cultivators who fought with bad tempers: capture them and throw them out. If it was just a dispute of words, then it would be best to comfort him. Lu Yi was still standing on the tall building of the Rainbow Merchant Guild's branch. His powerful divine sense spread out, radiating throughout the entire spiritual island. Fortunately, as long as the Yu Yao did not interfere, he did not have to deal with anything. The patrolling teams would handle it. Everything was in order. Lu Yi could not help but sigh. Back when Peerless Island was developing, he did not worry at all. He did not even feel a sense of belonging. Therefore, When Peerless Island was lost, he did not have much of a reaction. However, the current three-world island was not quite the same. Thinking about it carefully, it was because of his position. Back then he was alone. Even though he had Tang Jun, there were only two of them. Therefore, he did not care much about Peerless Island. However, things were different now. He was no longer alone. Thousands of cultivators from the three-world island were gathered here. This spiritual island was the foundation of the Jade Conch Galaxy in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He was not the only one. All the cultivators of the three-world island had great expectations for the cultivators of the three-world island. They had also worked hard for the rise of the three-world island. After the Battle of Baiyu, the cultivators of the three-world island united as one, causing the name of the three-world island to spread far and wide. This beautiful place that they had worked so hard for was worthy of everyone's protection. Thinking back to when he was fighting in the 9 prefectures, he was just a small cultivator under the Jade Blood sect. Unknowingly, he was already standing at such a high position. The Rainbow Merchant Guild's auction should have already started. He could vaguely feel the commotion in the tall building below him. Unfortunately, he could not participate in it personally. Shui Yuan's voice came from a shop next to him. The medicine shop of the island was opened next to the Rainbow Merchant Guild. At this moment, someone should be buying spiritual pills. The name of the medicine shop was very simple. It was the Three-World Medicine Shop. At first glance, one could tell that it was a shop opened by the island. It had its own guarantee of quality. Next to the medicine shop was the Three-World Weapon Shop. Currently, they were only selling twin chi-connected formation discs. However, in the future, they might sell things like spiritual treasures and magic treasures. The two shops occupied excellent locations. There was no need to worry about a lack of customers. In addition, the island had reserved a few shops in the direction of the ferry. Who knew what they would sell in the future? At most, they would charge less for rent. For the current three-world island, this was not a big problem. Feeling the commotion around him, Lu Ye's heart was calm. At this moment, he suddenly realized that he finally had a foothold on the vast 10,000 Elephant Sea. The three-world island was not the end. It was just a starting point. In the future, he would go further and stand higher. However, no matter where he was, he would not be alone. Behind him, there was the Jade Conch Galaxy and the 9 prefectures. End of chapter. Chapter 1762. The liveliness of the three-world island lasted for 10 days. After the first batch of guests entered the island, more and more cultivators continued to arrive. The cultivators that arrived rarely left. Because there was no time limit for entering the island this time, the cultivators could stay on the island for a long time. Even if they did not do any business, they could still enjoy the benefits of the cultivation environment of the three-world island. Of course, with tens of thousands of people staying on the island at the same time, no matter how abundant the energy of the spiritual island was, the benefits that each person would receive would not be much. Fortunately, the commercial area and the garrison area were completely separated. Therefore, the situation in the commercial area would not affect the garrison area of the island. If they cultivated in the garrison area, they would not be affected. The auction of the 5-color merchant guild was also a success. Lu Yi did not participate, but later on, it was said that the 20 bottles of peak-grade soul refining pills were fought over by many Yu Yao. As a result, the 5-color merchant guild's plan to build up their reputation was successful. The three-world island also received a decent amount of income. 10 days later, the cultivators left one after another. After half a month, the situation on the island gradually stabilized. According to Tang Jun's calculations, the daily flow of people on the three-world island was about 5,000. Compared to the tens of thousands of people who entered on the first day of the island, this number was undoubtedly insignificant. Moreover, the 5,000 flow of people was only temporary. It would probably decrease in the future. If it really stabilized, it would only be about 3,000 people. However, this was still very impressive. One had to know that the previous matchless island only had half of this number of people. To the three-world island, 3,000 people per day was an acceptable number. As long as the merchants on the island did not sell anything too bad, they would be able to earn their own profits. The cultivators of the three-world island were in pain but happy at the same time. In the past, before the development of the three-world island, they did not need to do anything. They only needed to focus on their own cultivation. However, this was not the case now. The 1,000 people of the three-world island had to be divided into groups and patrol the spiritual island in small groups. They could only start cultivating when there was no mission. Of course, the treatment of the cultivators of the three-world island now was not the same as before. When they first came here, everyone had to tighten their belts. Luan Xiao, who was in charge of finance, was even anxious for a while, worrying about the future. It wasn't until the Battle of Baiyue, where they obtained many spoils of war and went to extort Giant Blade, that the situation suddenly took a turn for the better. To this day, Three-World Island didn't have to worry about spirit jade at all. Many shops were rented out for an unimaginable amount of wealth. Moreover, there were still some empty shops waiting to be rented. Now, a portion of the merchants were negotiating with Tang Jun about leasing. It was no exaggeration to say that the three-world island was definitely in the top 10 or even the top 5 in terms of wealth in the entire 10,000 phenomenon sea. Now that he had money, he naturally had to start increasing his strength. The improvement of one's cultivation base could not be rushed. It had to be done step by step. However, the cultivator's spiritual treasures and magical treasures could be exchanged. This was especially true for the cultivators of the 9 regions. Their spiritual treasures were all brought out from the 9 regions and their quality was very low. Any one of them could greatly increase their strength. Furthermore, the cultivators of the 3 realms did not need to travel too far to purchase numinous treasures or dharma treasures. The Rainbow Merchant Guild sold them on the main island, and many other shops sold them as well. If the island's cultivators were to buy it, there would be a considerable discount. In less than a month, the cultivators of the 3 realms had exchanged 2 or 3 spiritual treasures on average, greatly increasing their strength. The cultivators' monthly salary had also greatly increased. Compared to when they first arrived, the cultivators' wallets were bulging. Everything was on the right track. Under the 10,000 phenomenon sea, Lu Ye's original body was immersed in cultivation, unable to extricate himself. This feeling of being able to intuitively feel one's body becoming stronger bit by bit was an extremely wonderful feeling. Of course, it would be even better if one did not consider the cost. Half a month after the opening of Three-World Island and the situation was on the right track, Lu Yi went deep into the 10,000 phenomenon sea and began his cultivation plan. In the past, when he cultivated like this, he still had to calculate the cost of the talent tree's fuel. He always had to keep a reserve for emergencies. But now, he did not need it at all. He had spent an extremely large amount of spirit jade from Luan Xiao to purchase fire-type treasures. Luan Xiao would still ask a few questions about how others spent their spirit jade. At the very least, she needed to know what her own cultivators were doing with the spirit jade. At the same time, the amount of spirit jade that each cultivator could spend was limited. However, she did not ask about Lu Yi at all. The current prosperity of the Three-World Island was largely due to Lu Yi. 70 to 80% of the wealth in the treasury was due to him. As long as Lu Yi did not give the island away, what was there for her to ask about? While his original body was cultivating, his clone was still refining the twin chi connection formation disk to ensure that the three-world artifact shop had sufficient supplies. To many cultivators, the twin chi connection formation disk was actually a type of consumable. This was something that could not be helped. The formation disk itself was not sturdy and could be easily destroyed. Therefore, the current situation of the cultivators in the 10,000 phenomenon sea had evolved into a situation where both sides would think of ways to destroy the other side's formation disk first when they were in formation. Moreover, the price of formation disks was not too expensive nowadays. Therefore, cultivator teams with financial resources would be equipped with 2 or 3 of them. This also led to a large demand for formation disks among cultivators. Under the 10,000 phenomenon sea, Lu Yi opened up his body and mind, allowing the seawater to corrode his body. Black smoke billowed from his talent tree, indicating the terrifying consumption of fuel. He stared at his talent tree, at the burning leaves on it, and at the exquisite patterns on it. Currently, he was facing a somewhat awkward situation. He had reached a bottleneck in his cultivation of the Tao of Spirit Runes. He could sense that there was still room for improvement in the various spirit runes and divine runes that he had mastered. However, because there was a limit to his understanding of the Tao of Spirit Runes, he could not continue with this kind of derivation. The talent tree's derivation ability was based on his own attainments in the Tao of Spirit Runes. The higher his attainments in this Tao, the stronger the talent tree's derivation ability would be. If he wanted to change this, he could only improve himself and further enhance the talent tree's derivation ability. In this way, perhaps one day, he would be able to refine a twin qi connection formation disk that was suitable for Yu Yao. Therefore, during this period of time when he was not cultivating, he had been comprehending the understandings of the Tao of Spirit Runes left behind by many predecessors. Not all of the burning leaves on the talent tree carried complete spirit runes. Many of the leaves did not carry spirit runes, but the understandings left behind by the predecessors. There were even some techniques for constructing spirit runes. In the past, Lu Yi did not pay much attention to these because he was not strong enough. He only focused on improving his strength. Now that he had calmed down and comprehended it properly, Lu Yi suddenly realized that every single leaf contained the essence of a predecessor's lifetime of cultivation. In the past, when he was constructing spirit runes, he could borrow the power of the talent tree to reach the level of understanding. When he thoroughly comprehended these treasures left behind by the predecessors, he would be able to reach the level of understanding why they were formed. This would undoubtedly be a huge improvement. Therefore, during this period of time, when he was cultivating, he had been working hard in this direction. His gains were indeed not small. While he was comprehending, Lu Ye's mind suddenly trembled. In an instant, his magic power hummed, and the speed at which it circulated in his body suddenly increased by a lot. Moreover, at this moment, his entire body felt extremely transparent, as if he had been sublimated. He was stunned for a moment before he realized that he had broken through. Middle stage Yu Yao. With a thought, through the information he received from his clone, Lu Yi confirmed that he had spent a full 3 months cultivating this time. It seemed that only a little more than a year had passed since he had broken through to Yu Yao in the Yinyang Great Millstone. This was definitely the fastest breakthrough he had ever made since he had ascended to the constellation realm. Of course, this was also related to the large amount of time and money he had spent to cultivate in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Early on, when he had returned to the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy to prepare for the battle against the Yu, Lu Yi had cultivated under the 10,000 Elephant Sea for 2 months. After the battle of the Yu, he had cultivated for another 2 months. When the situation on the three-world island had stabilized, Lu Yi had cultivated non-stop for a full 3 months. He had not even left the area. In total, he had stayed under the 10,000 Elephant Sea for more than 7 months. Just the talent tree's fuel alone, if converted to spiritual jades, would probably cost about 500 to 600 million spiritual jades. It was not strange that he could break through so quickly. Back when he was in the constellation realm, his cultivation had not been so fast mainly because he had not spent so much time on cultivation, so the entire cultivation period had been stretched out. In the eyes of outsiders, it was absolutely impossible to go from early stage Yu Yao to mid-stage Yu Yao in 7 months. Moreover, the quality of Lu Ye's spiritual source had not improved by much. If he could obtain some treasures that could improve the quality of his spiritual source, the efficiency of his cultivation would definitely increase. This way, he would be able to save on spiritual jades. Unfortunately, such treasures were too rare. The 10,000 Elephant Chamber of Commerce still had not received any news. Lu Yi had previously asked Ming Dang to borrow the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce's power to search for them, but it was unlikely that there would be any hope. There were too many treasures that Yu Yao needed. Not only Yu Yao, but also some Rizhao needed them. Therefore, very few of them would appear on the market, so he could only leave it to fate. Lu Yi was somewhat regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have bought the white moon crystal outside the Yinyang Great Millstone. Unfortunately, he did not know the value of the crystal back then. After steadily advancing, Lu Yi left the 10,000 Elephant Sea. A breakthrough required a period of time to settle down. Lu Yi did not plan to use this method to increase his cultivation in the short term. When he had obtained the Rainbow Divine Lotus, Hun Ke had been worried that his cultivation would not be able to keep up with the growth of his spirit. However, it seemed that Hun Ke's worries were unnecessary. After leaving the 10,000 Elephant Sea and returning to his residence, he immediately saw Yaya sleeping on his clone's leg. Chapter 1763. When Lu Yi was not around, Yaya was taken care of by Hua Si and Shui Yuan. Now that Lu Yi was back, Yaya stuck to him. During this period of time, Yaya had been accompanying his clone. Most of the time, she was sleeping. When she was awake, she would run out to play. In the past, the three-world island was not so lively. She did not have a place to play. Now, the three-world island was extraordinarily lively. The business district was filled with all kinds of dazzling things. Yaya loved to watch the bustle. Sometimes, she would even bring back some exquisite toys. The merchants who settled in the three-world island all knew of Yaya's existence. Although they did not understand why a child would be in this place, there were too many strange things in the cultivation world. Naturally, no one wanted to get to the bottom of it. Yaya was cute and lovable. Some of the female cultivators in the merchants would be overflowing with maternal love whenever they saw Yaya. They would give her some small things. Lu Yi went forward and carried Yaya. He placed her on a bed and covered her with a small blanket. Only then did he recall his clone. Then, he kept all the formation discs that his clone had been working hard on recently. He turned around to look for Shui Yuan. He sent a message and found that Shui Yuan was refining pills in the alchemy room. In the entire three-world island, the most famous and influential shop was undoubtedly the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce's branch. However, after this period of operation, the three-world alchemy shop's reputation had spread. After all, the pills that came from the pill gourd were of excellent quality. If Shui Yuan did not deliberately control the quality, every pill refined with the help of the pill gourd would be of the highest quality. This caused the three-world alchemy shop's supply of pills to be unable to meet the demand. Even if Shui Yuan organized many medical cultivators to start refining pills, the situation could not be changed. This was also related to the fact that the three-world alchemy shop was a shop on the island. The three-world alchemy shop was not the only shop that sold pills. However, the shops on the island naturally had some natural advantages. Seeing Shui Yuan in the alchemy room, Lu Yi was shocked. "Senior sister, how long have you not rested?" Shui Yuan looked a little haggard at this moment. She was about to reach the middle stage of the constellation realm. If it was not for the fact that she had not rested for a long time, she would not look like this. Shui Yuan replied weakly, "The last time I rested was the last time." Lu Yi advised, "You won't be able to earn all the spiritual jades. Besides, our three-world island is currently eating rent. The pill shops don't have to work so hard." "I know," Shui Yuan replied. "But everyone is very happy." The medical cultivators usually don't have much use, but now that they can sell the spirit pills they refined, they are very enthusiastic. As she spoke, she suddenly thought of something. "I heard you say that the 9 prefectures took in a group of flower people? When can you bring some flower people over?" Lu Yi looked at her hard-working appearance and felt a little distressed. He nodded and said, "I'll find some time to make a trip." There weren't many members of the flower race, but every one of them was a natural alchemist. Bringing a group of flower race members over should be able to reduce the pressure on second senior sister. He believed that Hua Qianying would not reject his offer. After all, if he could refine pills and sell them here, his safety would be guaranteed and he could even earn spirit jades. But now, even with the Spirita's ancestral land as a transit point, this round trip would still take about 2 months. Compared to the previous trip that took several years, it was much better. "Why are you looking for me?" Shui Yuan took the opportunity to rest and sat to the side to drink a mouthful of tea. "I'm going to the Huang Snail Palace to see how Hua Si is doing." Shui Yuan said, "You should go and see. I went there once half a month ago. Nothing has changed with Hua Si for the time being." As she spoke, she took out the azure sea snail and blew it, revealing the door. Lu Yi walked in and said, "I won't come back this time." Senior sister, open the door to pick me up in 7 days. But Shui Yuan nodded. After stepping through the door, Lu Yi was in a daze. He was already in front of the Huang Snail Palace. There were still mere people cultivators guarding this place, but when they saw that it was Lu Yi, they ignored him. Everyone was already very familiar with him. Lu Yi didn't greet anyone and walked straight out of the Huang Snail Palace. Soon he arrived at a place that could be considered the border between the Huang Snail Palace and the Wanxiang Sea. The entire Huang Snail Palace was inside a huge conch. This conch was extremely magical and had the ability to isolate seawater, so there was no seawater inside the Huang Snail Palace. The Huang Snail Palace itself was located on a vast spirit jade mine. There seemed to be a transparent membrane at the border. There was no seawater inside the membrane, but seawater outside the membrane. The huge amber that sealed Wuxia and the Pai Xiu was placed at the border. Only half of it was submerged in seawater. Lu Yi stood in front of the amber and looked up. Wuxia was still the same, sitting cross-legged in the amber. Pai Xiu, the golden toad, was crawling on her lap. One person and one beast seemed to be sleeping peacefully. Lu Yi tried to use his divine sense, but he still couldn't penetrate the amber to check on Huaxi's situation. However, upon closer inspection, Lu Yi was surprised to find that the golden coin pattern on the Pai Xiu's body seemed to be more solid. This amber was formed after the Pai Xiu swallowed the treasure coin. Moreover, the amber itself also inherited the treasure coin's ability to swallow energy. Back then, Lu Yi speculated that the amber would only be unsealed if it swallowed enough energy. That was why the amber with Huaxi's sealed in it was sent here. Now, it seemed that he was right. Because this amber had been swallowing the energy of the Wanxiang Sea's water, the coin pattern on the Pai Xiu's body had also undergone some changes. This was undoubtedly good news. However, after such a long time, the amber still hadn't been unsealed. Lu Yi didn't know how long he would have to wait. Lu Yi raised his hand and stroked the amber. He felt a little melancholy. Lu Yi! A familiar voice called out to him. Lu Yi turned his head and saw the mermaid clan's princess, Bai Lu, swaying her fishtail as she rushed over. Her face was full of joy. Beside her, there was a familiar petite figure. It was Ghost. However, unlike Bai Lu's joy, Ghost's face was gloomy. She looked at Lu Yi as if she was looking at a pile of feces. Lu Yi nodded slightly at Bai Lu. Bai Lu stopped in front of him and smiled. "You're here?" Lu Yi said, "I'm here to see Huaxi." Bai Lu looked past him and at Hupa behind him. She said, "I often come to see Sister Huaxi, but nothing has changed during this time. Thank you for your hard work." Bai Lu was a little embarrassed. "It's not hard. I can't help much. But don't worry, the mermaid clan will take good care of Sister Huaxi here." Just as they were talking, the mermaid clan's second elder, Yushi, also arrived. Unlike the dignified great elder Yen Miao, Yushi was a very charming mermaid. Before she arrived, her coquettish voice could already be heard. A clan member reported that an honored guest had arrived. "I was wondering who it was, but it turns out to be true." "Second elder." Lu Yi bowed. Yushi returned the greeting. "You're here to see Madam?" She had undoubtedly learned about the relationship between Lu Yi and Huaxi from Yen Miao and Cheng Exin. Yushi smiled. "Young friend, you're really loyal. But from what I see, there shouldn't be any big problems with Madam. This may be an opportunity for her, so young friend, you don't have to worry too much." "I hope so." Lu Yi nodded. He also felt that there shouldn't be any big problems. Yushi glanced at Bai Lu, who was listening attentively without taking her eyes off Lu Yi for a moment. She sighed in her heart and smiled. "Young friend, it's a good thing to be loyal, but not infatuated. For someone like young friend, you shouldn't be too attached to love. There are thousands of beautiful flowers. Young friend, you may miss out on many wonderful things if you only focus on one." Lu Ye's eyes flashed. Bai Lu, who was staring at him, suddenly blushed. Ghost, who was standing next to Bai Lu, couldn't help but roll her eyes. A golden light suddenly shot out and hit the spot where Yushi was. Yushi cried out in surprise, and then there was no more movement. Lu Yi and the others were all shocked and hurriedly looked at Yushi. They saw that Yushi's body was stiff, as if she had been hit by a spell and couldn't move. Her face was full of shock and a little panic. "Second Elder!" Bai Lu exclaimed and hurriedly rushed over to Yushi. Lu Yi turned his head and looked in the direction of the amber. Inside the amber, Wuxia still had her eyes closed and the Pixiu on her knees did not move, but Lu Yi keenly noticed that the luster of the money on the Pixiu's body had dimmed a lot. He was ecstatic. Although he had always felt that Wuxia was not dangerous being sealed in the amber, and as Yushi said, this was an opportunity for her. After all, it was just a guess. But now it could be confirmed. The golden light just now was undoubtedly the power of the treasure money. The treasure money had been swallowed by the Pixiu, so it was impossible for it to be activated for no reason, and it was even more impossible for it to hit Yushi. Wuxia was still awake, and she could hear the movement outside. Her action just now was undoubtedly her sending a message to Lu Yi. Looking at the face sealed in the amber, Lu Yi was relieved and let out a long sigh. Raising his hand and gently knocking on the amber, Lu Yi said in a gentle tone, "Come out soon." "Second Elder." Bai Lu was still calling out to Yushi, and Ghost stood aside with a serious expression. She looked at Yushi for a while, then at the amber, and was very suspicious. She was also a moon jade now, but she did not understand what had happened just now, and she did not know what was wrong with Yushi. Lu Yi stepped forward and said, "Don't worry, the second elder is fine. She probably won't be able to move for a while. Bai Lu, take the second elder back and take care of her. She will recover after a while." Bai Lu was relieved when she heard this. She nodded and said, "Okay." After saying this, she picked up the stiff Yushi and returned to the Emperor's Snail Palace. Ghost was too lazy to stay with Lu Yi, and she was afraid that she would be bullied, so she hurriedly followed. Then she turned back and shouted at Lu Yi, "I'm going to break through to the mid-stage of the Moon Jade, just you wait." Defeating Lu Yi and taking revenge for the humiliation she had suffered all these years was the biggest motivation for Ghost's cultivation. Moreover, cultivating with Bai Lu was ridiculously efficient. This gave her full confidence that she would be able to regain her dignity after breaking through to the mid-stage of the Moon Jade. Thinking about the day that was about to come, Ghost was full of energy. Chapter 1764. Lu Yi stayed at the Huang Luo Palace for a few days. Every day, he would take the time to visit Wuxia and talk to her. He knew that doing so would not have any substantial effect on Wuxia's unsealing, but he was always afraid that she would be alone here. Lu Yi spent the rest of his time helping the Mer people solve the problem of the bloodline curse. Previously, he had used the power of the talent tree to burn away a batch of the Mer people's bloodline curse, but in the end, it was not all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he could solve part of it. Otherwise, this problem would fall on his head again in the future. Every mermaid was deeply grateful for this. Now, many Mer people had left the territory and witnessed the wonderful outside. Those who were still troubled by the bloodline curse and could not leave the territory were naturally envious. Moreover, solving the bloodline curse not only allowed the Mer people to escape their current living environment, but also seemed to have a certain impact on their cultivation. Take Yen Miao for example. Before the bloodline curse was solved, she could not see the path to sunshine, but after the bloodline curse was solved, she vaguely had some confidence. In recent years, with the help of the supreme grade soul refining pill, her chances of breaking through to sunshine were much higher. 7 days later, Shui Yuan blew the azure sea snail as promised, and the door in front of the heavenly snail palace opened. Lu Yi was reluctantly sent off by a group of Mer people. After returning to the three-world island, Lu Yi did not stay. He found Luan Xiaoa and a few other Yueyao guards and left quietly after giving them some instructions. He had just broken through to the middle Yueyao realm and needed some time to settle down. He could use this time to go back to the 9 states and bring some flower race people to refine pills. Last time, Hua Qianying did not go with Lu Yi mainly because the flower race had just joined the 9 states and everything was not settled yet. Now that some time had passed, Lu Yi believed that the flower race had completely stabilized. If Lu Yi went to find Hua Qianying at this time, she would not refuse. Even if she did not come, it would not be a problem for her to send some of her people. Ma Shangxi was loyal and wanted to go with him, but Lu Yi asked him to stay. After he left, in the entire Three Realms island, Ma Shangxi was the most powerful person on the surface. Thus, he had to stay behind to oversee things. Riding the star boat, he left the Wanxiang Sea and entered the Zhangyue Galaxy through the insect path. There were no twists and turns, but there was a small interlude. This was because every time one used the insect tunnels of another star system to pass through, they would have to report their origin and purpose of passage. Lu Yi had experienced this last time. However, at that time, he was only at the late stage of the constellation realm. He didn't even get to meet Yu Yao, who was overseeing this place. However, it was different this time. He was already Yu Yao. Although he had been maintaining the pseudo-prestige spirit runes and disguised his magic power fluctuations to the level of Yu Yao's early stage, no one could ignore the fact that he was Lu Yi of the Three-World Island. This was especially true for the Zhangyue Galaxy, where there were shops in the Three-World Islands. It could be said that they had a cooperative relationship. So, when Lu Yi saw Zhangyue and Yu Yao, who were overseeing this place, they exchanged a few words. Then, they were personally escorted into Zhangyue Galaxy. When he arrived at the Zhangyue Galaxy, Yu Yao introduced him, and he met Yu Yao, who was overseeing the insect path. It was difficult to refuse her hospitality, so Lu Yi could only stay here for half a day before leaving. The 2 times he used the Zhangyue Galaxy's insect path, the treatment he received was very different. This was not only because Lu Ye's cultivation base had increased, but more importantly, the Three-World Island's reputation had risen. Moreover, there were shops in the Zhangyue Galaxy on the Three-World Island. As the 3rd island master of the Three-World Island, how could they dare to slight Lu Yi? This trip back to the 9 provinces was peaceful. When Lu Yi returned 2 months later, there was not only a new group of flower race members in the Little Flower Realm, but also some members of the Wood Spirit race and the Spore race. Now that Little Nine had Little Huan Yang to accompany her, she no longer felt lonely, so she didn't pay much attention to Lu Ye's hurried arrival. Lu Yi couldn't help but sigh. Little Nine had changed. Thinking back, Little Nine used to be so clingy. It was worth mentioning that Hua Qianying had reached Yu Yao. Not only her, but Mu He and Black Umbrella had also advanced to Yu Yao. It could be said that this was the most joyous event for the 2 races in recent years. The flower race was born in the flower realm. The cultivation base of their race was very special. Their own cultivation base was not the most important thing, but the growth of the flower realm. The higher the upper limit of the flower realm, the higher the limit of their cultivation base. Although not much time had passed since the World King Flower was attached to the 9 provinces, the foundation of the flower realm had grown greatly. As a result, the overall cultivation base of the flower race had increased by quite a bit. Currently, the flower race only had Hua Qianying and Yu Yao, but in a few years, there would be more than that. Mu He and Black Umbrella had advanced because they had accumulated enough experience. They had brought their clansmen here because the Three-World Island had a better cultivation environment. There were not many clansmen left in these 2 clansmen. If they could reach a higher cultivation level, they would be able to protect themselves better. With the arrival of the 3 races, the situation of alchemy on the Three-World Island improved greatly. It was rare for Lu Yi to be so free. He spent most of his time comprehending the legacy of his ancestors on the talent tree's leaf, hoping to improve his Tao of spirit patterns. Every once in a while, he would go to the Emperor's Snail Palace to check on Hua Xi's situation. At the same time, he would help the remaining mermaids get rid of the curse. The piece of amber that sealed Hua Xi's eye was still the same. He didn't know when it would be unsealed. However, the gold mark on Pai Xiu's body was becoming more exquisite and bright. On this day, when Lu Yi returned from the Emperor's Snail Palace, Shui Yuan said, "Island Lord Luan wants you to look for her when you return. She has something important to discuss." "What is it?" Lu Yi asked casually. Shui Yuan replied, "I'm not sure about the details, but I heard that Fengtsuan Mountain is coming." Lu Yi didn't react immediately. He wondered which spiritual island Yu Yao belonged to. Fengtsuan Mountain. Shui Yuan glanced at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. that Fengzuan mountain of the human race. Lu Yi also reacted now. His eyes flashed. Which one? He suddenly felt a little uneasy and nervous. What do you mean which one? It was Shui Yuan's turn to be confused. Fengzuan mountain has 3 divisions. They are divided into the east, south, and west. Shui Yuan obviously hadn't heard of this before. She thought about it seriously and asked, why isn't there the north? Lu Yi was stumped. That's right. If there were the east, south, and west divisions, why wasn't there Fengzuan mountain in the north? Back when he was in the east, he didn't think about this problem. After leaving the alchemy room, Lu Yi hurriedly sent a message to Luan Xiaoa and arranged a meeting place with her. Then, he headed straight to the meeting hall. Not long after, the Yu Yao from the 3-world island gathered in the meeting hall. Other than Luan Xiaoa, Lu Yi, and the other Yu Yao guardians who were responsible for registration, Tang Jun, and the newcomer Hua Chenying were also present. After everyone was present, Lu Yi looked at Luan Xiaoa. Senior sister, Fengzuan mountain is coming? Is this true or false? Where did this news come from? Luan Xiaoa said, you'll have to ask your senior brother Tang about this. He was the one who found out. However, the Vientiane Sea has been abuzz recently. It shouldn't be fake. Lu Yi turned to look at old Tang. He was in charge of the external affairs and had connections with many spiritual islands. Naturally, he was the most informed. Tang Jun sipped his spiritual tea and said, I can confirm that the news is true. Many spiritual islands are already making preparations. We can't fall behind. In a month or 2 months, Fengzuan mountain will pass by the Vientiane galaxy. Fengzuan mountain drifted in space. Therefore, it wasn't strange that it would pass by the Vientiane galaxy. It was just like how the Fengzuan mountain road in the east passed by the Jade Conch galaxy in the past. Which division is coming? Lu Yi asked. Tang Jun looked at Lu Yi in surprise. Kid, if you can ask such a question, it seems like you know quite a bit about Fengzuan mountain. Most people only knew about Fengzuan mountain. They didn't know that Fengzuan mountain was split into 3 divisions. Lu Yi didn't say anything. He couldn't help but recall the days when he was at Fengzuan mountain in the east. If they were coming to the east, should he pay them a visit? Speaking of which, he was Haitong's Dao companion in name. Back then he used this title to participate in the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition. He wondered how Haitang was doing after all these years. Tang Jun's voice rang out. Now, we only know that Fengzuan mountain is coming. As for which division, no one knows. Ri Zhao from the Vientiane Sea might know the details, but they won't announce it to the public. Lu Yi nodded. This was reasonable. He couldn't help but ask, if Fengzuan mountain is coming, then so be it. What do we need to prepare? Or rather, what are the other spiritual islands preparing? Old Tang said, because Fengzuan mountain is going to hold a spirit talisman convention in the Vientiane Sea. When the time comes, there will be many spirit talismans produced by the humanoid tribe being sold. Of course, we have to prepare. In the universe, spirit talismans from the humanoid tribe were rare treasures. This was because the spirit talismans refined by the humanoid tribe could be nourished with the blood of cultivators. The longer the time of nourishment, the more powerful the spirit talisman would be. Lu Yi had once obtained a batch, so he had a deep understanding of this. It was a pity that the 2 red talismans had been used up. If he could exchange for some more red talismans from Fengzuan mountain this time, he could use them as a trump card to make up for the shortcoming of not being able to use money for the time being. The humanoid tribe had the intention to hold a spirit talisman convention in the Vientiane Sea. This was indeed worthy of every spiritual island's attention. After all, such opportunities were rare. It was not strange when one thought about it. Although there was a spirit jade mine in Fengzuan mountain, the humanoid tribe did not only need spirit jades to cultivate. They also needed to trade with the outside world and exchange for resources. The Vientiane Sea was the center of the universe and the most prosperous place. There was everything one wanted here. It was rare to pass by this place, so Fengzuan mountain probably wanted to take the opportunity to accumulate more resources for cultivation. In this way, the 2 sides hit it off. It was foreseeable that this spirit talisman convention would be extremely lively. When the time came, Who knew how many cultivators would participate? In order to exchange for suitable spirit talismans from the humanoid tribe, they had to be prepared. End of chapter. Chapter 1765. In the meeting hall, Luan Xiao said, "We should be able to buy some low-quality talismans with spiritual jades. However, if we want better talismans, we'll have to barter. We have no problem with spiritual jades. As for resources, the only thing we have are supreme-grade elixirs. It shouldn't be a problem to exchange them for a batch of high-quality talismans." The supreme-grade elixirs that the three-world island could refine were not limited to the supreme-grade elixirs. With the addition of the flower tribe, there were many more types of elixirs. These were undoubtedly bargaining chips that could be used as trading chips, and they were rather tempting ones at that. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss how many resources the three-world island should fork out to exchange for the dwarf tribe's talismans. This matter required a plan. Although the three-world island had a lot of assets, they could not spend them recklessly. Of course, these were the common assets of the three-world island. If any of the three-world island's cultivators used their own resources to exchange for the talismans, it would depend on their luck. The meeting did not last long. A decision was made in just 2 hours. Tang Jun would be in charge of this matter with Luan Xiao's assistance. When the time came, they would see if they could talk to Yu Yao of the dwarf tribe face to face. After all, if they exchanged for the talismans in bulk, there might be some discounts. Lu Yi did not interrupt because he could not be sure which tribe of the dwarf tribe was coming. If it was the eastern tribe, things would be easy to handle. He might be able to get a great discount. However, if it was the southern or western tribe, there was nothing he could do. The only interaction he had with these two tribes was the battle of wits and courage in the Black Abyss. The 10,000 Elephant Sea was bustling with activity. The news of the Fangsuan Mountain passing by spread very quickly. Just as Tang Jun had said, the three-world island was not the only one making preparations. All the major spiritual islands were preparing for this. Even many rogue cultivators without spiritual islands were looking forward to this grand occasion. Dapan Island was located near the center of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was one of the few deserted islands that cultivators knew by name. This was because it was the largest deserted island in the entire 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was even several times larger than the 10,000 Elephant Island. Normally, cultivators would not pay attention to deserted islands that did not have any cosmic energy. Naturally, they would not know their names. However, the uniqueness of Dapan Island caused its name to spread far and wide. Of course, there would be some weak forces that would use such a huge island as their base, and there was more than one of them. These powerhouses were small groups that did not have the capital to occupy the spiritual island. Normally, they would use the island as a gathering point and live a life where they minded their own business. However, during this period of time, these small groups on Dapan Island had been driven away. The ones who appeared were cultivators from the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy. They were building some basic facilities on Dapan Island. At first, no one knew what this was about. But soon, news spread that Dapan Island had been chosen as the location of the Spirit Talisman Convention at Fangsuan Mountain. When the news spread, no one was surprised. First of all, the Spirit Talisman Convention was bound to be very lively. If the place was small, it wouldn't be able to be fully displayed. Therefore, there weren't many spirit islands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea that could be used as the venue for the convention. The Myriad Elephant Island met the criteria, but if the Myriad Elephant Island suffered any losses in preparation for the Spirit Talisman Convention, the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce would definitely be unhappy. Therefore, it could only be Dapan Island. If the Fangsuan Mountain came, they would definitely connect with the local galaxy. Naturally, the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy would be responsible for the Spirit Talisman Convention this time. In the alchemy room, Shui Yuan and Hua Qianying were busy. For this Spirit Talisman Convention, they needed to quickly refine a batch of supreme-grade spirit refining pills. Fortunately, with the help of the pill gourd, it was not difficult to refine pills. However, the Three Realms pill shop needed pills to operate. The thousands of cultivators also needed pills to cultivate. Therefore, The alchemy room could not rest for a moment. Wiping the sweat on her forehead, Shui Yuan looked to the side. What are you still doing here? Lu Yi was sitting cross-legged on the ground. He looked at them with his hands supporting his face. His gaze was unfocused. When he heard Shui Yuan's words, he came back to his senses. To see if you need help with anything. Shui Yuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. What can you help with? It's good enough that you don't cause trouble. Get out. If you have nothing to do, go see Hua Si. The sooner you wake her up, the less pressure I will have. After being mercilessly driven out of the alchemy room by Shui Yuan, Lu Yi walked to Tang Jun's residence in boredom. Seeing him coming, old Tang had a headache. He said with a bitter face, "Didn't I tell you that I would inform you if there was news?" "Then is there news?" Lu Yi asked. Old Tang was expressionless. "I didn't even inform you. You tell me if there is news. Your information channels are not very good." Lu Yi was a little disdainful. Tang Jun was puzzled. "I don't understand. What difference does it make which division comes from Mount Fengsuan? Why do you care? They are all from the human race. It's fine as long as you can exchange talismans from them." There was a difference, and the difference was very big. If the Eastern Division came, then he would have a natural advantage. In any case, he had the title of Haitong's Dao Companion. He could be considered half a human race. When the time came to negotiate with the Eastern Division, he would definitely get a discount. However, if it was the Southern Division or the Western Division, he would not have this advantage. However, before the results came out, Lu Yi could not explain too much. As he spoke, old Tang suddenly took out a sound talisman and checked it. He hurriedly walked out. "If you have something to do, do as you please." Ever since he became the External Affairs Elder of the Three Realms Island, Tang Jun had been so busy that he hit the back of his head. Today, there would be people inviting him to a gathering. Tomorrow, there would be people inviting him to listen to music. His days were very carefree. "Hurry up and find out which division it is from Mount Fengsuan," Lu Yi urged. If the results were not out, he would not be in the mood to do anything. Recently, he could not even calm down to comprehend the legacy of the ancestors on the talent tree. A small figure suddenly rushed out from the side and threw herself into his arms. She affectionately called out, "Daddy." Lu Yi casually picked Yaya up and scratched her little nose. "Where did you go crazy from again?" Yaya pouted. "I just woke up." She reached out and grabbed Lu Ye's clothes. She quickly climbed onto his shoulder and sat down. Her chubby little finger pointed in the direction of the trade area. "Go play. Let's go." Lu Yi responded. He carried Yaya and rushed out. Yaya was still the best. She was innocent and unaffected. She only cared about playing and did not need to worry about anything. But then again, Lu Yi had not been in the mood for other matters recently. He had the time to accompany Yaya. The relationship between father and daughter was much deeper than before. In the end, old Tang was still a well-informed person. After a few more days, he finally found out the exact news. Mount Fengsuan was coming from the west. When he heard this news, Lu Ye's feelings were a bit complicated. He was both disappointed and relieved. It was hard to explain. Now that Mount Fengsuan had entered the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy, they would arrive at the Myriad Phenomenon Sea region in 10 days. Therefore, the Spirit Talisman Conference would officially begin in 10 days. Countless cultivators raised their heads in anticipation. Some even headed in the direction Mount Fengsuan had come from. They wanted to see what the legendary Mount Fengsuan looked like. After all, it was rumored that Mount Fengsuan was a supreme treasure in the starry sky. However, for some unknown reason, it had split into 3 parts, becoming the eastern, southern, and western parts. It was rumored that Mount Fengsuan's misfortune back then was related to the vampires. This directly led to the lesser humans viewing the vampires as their greatest enemy. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Japan Island was filled with people. The current situation was much livelier than when the Three-World Island opened. There were more than 100,000 cultivators gathered here. Although there were many people, they were all gathered outside the island. Not a single person had set foot on the island. Because the main character of the Spirit Talisman Conference had yet to arrive, There was not a single lesser human on the island. It was meaningless for the cultivators to rush in now. Everyone was waiting. A small mountain slowly appeared at the end of his field of vision. As far as the eye could see, this small mountain was like a small floating continent. It was not a rare sight in the starry sky. Even if a cultivator were to encounter it by chance in the starry sky, they would never imagine that this was actually the famous Mount Fengsuan. The small mountain's speed was not considered fast. It was about the speed of a late-stage constellation realm cultivator driving a planetary boat. It floated in from above the 10,000 elephant sea, entering uninhabited territory. The void trembled. When ripples spread out, a majestic pressure descended from the heavens. In the vision of many cultivators, 5 figures suddenly appeared. Heaven and earth fell silent. Everyone's eyes were filled with reverence as they looked at these 5 figures. This was because these 5 were the 5 sunshine guardians of the 10,000 elephant sea. Yuan Du of the Yuan realm, Gu Shi of the Tianyan realm, Mu Qing of the Kunyu realm, Mo Wenli of the illusion god realm, and Chen Xuanba of the high heavens continent. Usually, these 5 sunshine guardians lived in seclusion. Even Yu Yao found it difficult to meet them. Take Old Tang for example. When he first went to visit Yuan Du, he did not see him at all. Later on, when he wanted to visit Mu Qing, he did not see him either. However, at this very moment, these 5 sunshine guardians had appeared together. This was because the Mini-Man tribe of Mount Fengsuan had the right to be received by them. Moreover, Mount Fengsuan was a starry sky treasure. Even if it was broken, it was still a fragment of a starry sky treasure. No one knew what kind of power it had. Almost at the same time as these 5 sunshine guardians appeared, the speeding Mount Fengsuan began to slow down. Soon it came to a stop. Lu Yi had stayed at Mount Fengsuan in the east for some time. Naturally, he knew that the operation of Mount Fengsuan could be interfered with. However, it could not be maintained for too long. At most, it could only be maintained for a month. Therefore, even if the Mini-Man tribe used some means to stop Mount Fengsuan on the 10,000 elephant sea, they would have to leave after a month at most. Outside Mount Fengsuan, ripples spread out. Several figures appeared one after another. In terms of power, these figures were not inferior to the 5 sunshine guardians of the 10,000 elephant sea. They were obviously sunshine of the Mini-Man tribe. Countless cultivators around Japan Island looked at them. Someone revealed a puzzled expression and asked, "Master, why do the Mini-Man tribe look no different from us humans? Shouldn't they be the Mini-Man tribe?" Master explained, "Mini-Man and Maximon are only in comparison. Look, isn't Mount Fengsuan small? However, to the Mini-Man tribe, this is their world. Therefore, they are indeed very small. However, once they leave Mount Fengsuan, they have the ability to maintain their body size to that of a normal human." The disciple immediately revealed a look of understanding. End of chapter. Chapter 1766. Fengsuan Mountain had arrived at the Wanxiang Sea, and the 5 sunshine guardians had personally come out to welcome them. Both sides met on the Wanxiang Sea. 4 sunshine guardians appeared from the Mini-Man tribe. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the 9 sunshine guardians headed toward the Wanxiang Island. Although the spirit talisman convention was important, sunshine guardians would not personally handle it. The Yu Yao of both sides would take care of it. As the 9 sunshine guardians disappeared, the area outside Fengsuan Mountain gradually became lively. Many figures walked out of Fengsuan Mountain, and they were undoubtedly the Mini-Man tribe. They looked at the Wanxiang Sea curiously. At the same time, countless cultivators were also looking at them curiously. Everyone had heard of the legends of the Mini-Man tribe, but this was the first time they had seen one. After a while, many cultivators looked disappointed. Based on appearance alone, the Mini-Man tribe did not look any different from the human race. The Wanxiang Galaxy's Yu Yao came out to take care of the Mini-Man tribe. After a brief discussion, a large number of Mini-Mans flew toward Japan Island. They each found a good spot and set up their own stalls. In a short period of time, thousands of Mini-Mans swarmed into Japan Island. Most of them were constellation guardians. There were also some Yu Yao, but there were not many of them. Outside Fengsuan Mountain, There were many Yu Yao of the Miniman tribe guarding it to prevent anyone from sneaking in. At this moment, a late-stage Yu Yao from the Wanxiang Sea announced loudly, "Fellow Taoists, the Spirit Talisman Convention will begin today. This convention will last for 10 days. Those who are interested in obtaining spirit talismans can enter Dapan Island to trade with the Miniman tribe. I wish both sides a fruitful return." As soon as he said that, the hundreds of thousands of cultivators who had been waiting for a long time swarmed into Dapan Island from all directions. They rushed to the stalls of the Miniman tribe. In the blink of an eye, almost every stall of the Miniman tribe was crowded with people. Old Tang and Luan Xiao were among the crowd. They had long since set their sights on Yu Yao. The two of them were here to trade spirit talismans on behalf of the Three Realms Island. They needed quite a number of spirit talismans, so they naturally had to choose a suitable target to trade with. Yu Yao was not part of their list of choices. Almost as soon as Yu Yao finished speaking, the two of them rushed toward Dapan Island. However, even though they were fast, there were people who were even faster. Before they arrived, they were surrounded by a group of cultivators. The cultivators' thirst for the humanoid spirit talismans exceeded their expectations. After all, the humanoid spirit talismans could be continuously nourished. Any decent spirit talisman could even be treated as a family heirloom. There were many spiritual islands on the 10,000 Manifestations Sea. Old Tang and Luan Xiao's plan was not the only one. Many Yu Yao guardians of the spiritual islands had the same plan as them. As a result, the cultivators gathered around the Yu Yao of the human clan were almost all representatives of the various spiritual islands. They were all Yu Yao cultivators. The little humans clearly hadn't expected the situation to be so intense, and they didn't know what to do for a moment. They tried their best to maintain order, but at a time like this, the first to act would get nothing. Furthermore, they were all Yu Yao, so how were they supposed to maintain order? Fortunately, although the scene was bustling, the cultivators from all the spiritual islands were still restrained. No one dared to make a scene at this moment. This was the case for the Yu Yao of the human clan, and it was the same for the constellations. Although several thousand humanoids had come this time, there were more than 100,000 cultivators gathered here. On average, there were at least a few dozen people in front of each humanoid spirit talisman stall. The Spirit Talisman Convention began in such a lively and noisy atmosphere. One could imagine that such a lively atmosphere would definitely last for a day or two before the excitement would slowly die down. 1,000 miles away from Dapan Island, Lu Yi was leisurely heading over on his planetary boat. Yaya was riding on his neck. She grabbed his hair with one hand and pointed to the front with the other. She shouted in a childish voice, "Watch the show! Watch the show!" Lu Yi felt a little helpless. After learning that they were coming from the western Fangsuan Mountain, he didn't pay much attention to it. Tang Jun and Luan Xiao were in charge of the exchange of spirit talismans between the Three World Islands and the humanoid spirit talismans. He couldn't do much. In the end, Yaya heard the news from somewhere and insisted on coming to watch the show. When Lu Yi didn't allow it, she actually made a scene and rolled on the ground. Lu Yi had no choice but to agree. Only then was Yaya satisfied. The father and daughter, duo then rushed toward Dapan Island. They soon arrived at their destination. From afar, Lu Yi immediately saw the Fangsuan Mountain floating in the air not far away. Compared to the eastern Fangsuan Mountain he saw previously, the western Fangsuan Mountain didn't seem to be much different. He looked at Dapan Island and saw a sea of people. It was truly lively. Lu Yi tried to find traces of Tang Jun and Luan Xiao, but he couldn't find them. He didn't know where they were. Yaya loved this kind of lively scene. Perhaps it was because she had been alone in the Mist Dragon for too long, but her eyes were shining at this moment. After entering Dapan Island, he could hear the sounds of bargaining. There were also cultivators who were secretly cursing. It was obvious that the transaction with the dwarf tribe was not going well. Lu Yi didn't have any special purpose. He just wanted to bring Yaya around. He casually chose a direction and strolled. It had to be said that the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy had prepared well for the Spirit Talisman Conference. Exquisite shops had been built in the periphery of Dapan Island. Every humanoid spirit talisman occupied a shop and used it as their own stall. Spirit talismans were placed on the counters of the shops for people to inspect. If they were satisfied, they could discuss the price with the stall owner. They could either buy with spirit jades or exchange with other resources. Lu Yi did a rough calculation. There were at least a few thousand shops on Dapan Island. It was considered good that they had prepared so many shops in such a short time. It was just that this order was a little chaotic. This couldn't be helped. There were too many cultivators, including Yu Yao. Even the myriad phenomenon C couldn't manage it well. They could only let nature take its course. As long as no one caused trouble or conflict on Dapan Island, it wasn't a big deal. Yaya was very happy. She rode on Lu Ye's neck and swayed her head left and right. Lu Yi walked past them. Suddenly, a familiar voice entered his ears. Fellow Taoist, I told you that this 100 defense talisman is a precious item. It can definitely save your life at a critical moment. If you don't have 500,000 spirit jades, there's no need to talk about it. Lu Yi looked in the direction of the voice. Through the crowd, he saw a familiar face. The other party's gaze inadvertently swept across his face. At first, he didn't pay much attention to it. However, he soon turned his gaze back. When he met Lu Ye's eyes, he was stunned. Then, the humanoid spirit talisman shouted in surprise, "Brother Lu." Lu Yi smiled and replied, "Brother Yi." The other party was Yi Chaochuan, who had participated in the Battle of the Black Abyss. At that time, Lu Yi was the leader of the Eastern Mountains Fangsuan Mountain, while Yi Chaochuan was the leader of the Western Mountains Fangsuan Mountain. They led their respective teams and fought in the Black Abyss. In the end, the Eastern Mountains team was more skilled and won first place. There was also Duan Xiuchen, who was the leader of the Southern Mountains Fangsuan Mountain. Lu Yi wasn't too surprised to see Yi Chaochuan here. This time, he had come to the Western Mountains Fangsuan Mountain, so it wasn't strange for Yi Chaochuan to appear here. Back then, this person's cultivation was at the late star constellation realm. Now that so many years had passed, Yi Chaochuan had clearly advanced to the Yu Yao realm. Thus, the people gathered in front of his shop were all Yu Yao cultivators. As the two of them spoke, many Yu Yao cultivators were bewildered. None of them had expected that the humanoid spirit talisman would actually have someone they were familiar with in the myriad elephant sea. Then, when they looked at Lu Ye's face, some of them recognized him. Many of them had watched the Battle of the 100 Yu Yao from afar, so they had naturally seen Lu Yi before. For a moment, they were envious. The humanoid spirit talismans were good stuff. They had been haggling with Yi Chaochuan over the past few years, but none of them had been able to reach a formal agreement. However, if Lu Yi was someone Yi Chaochuan was familiar with, then he would undoubtedly have a great advantage. My humble shop is closing for the day. Everyone, please come back later. Yi Chaochuan suddenly called out, beginning to chase them away. Although the Yu Yao cultivators were helpless, they were not the type to pester others. As they left, they all looked at Lu Yi enviously. They felt that the spirit talismans here were probably going to fall into Lu Ye's hands. Once the cultivators who had come to trade had left, Yi Chaochuan warmly welcomed Lu Yi into the shop. He even took out a sign, wrote the words "closed," and hung it up. Inside the shop, Yi Chaochuan invited Lu Yi to take a seat. He glanced curiously at Yi, who had climbed down from Lu Ye's back. Then he took out a sound talisman and sent out a message. He chuckled and said, "Brother Lu, please wait a moment. I have a few old friends that you'd like to meet." Lu Yi nodded. He thought to himself, these old friends are either people who have killed me before, or they have been killed by me before. Moreover, I'm not familiar with the humanoid spirit talisman in the West. In fact, even Yi Chaochuan himself isn't all that familiar with each other. They've only crossed swords once in the Black Abyss. However, since they've already done so, he can only accept the fact that he's here. When they meet later, he'll just have to exchange a few polite greetings. As for using this relationship to make a deal with the talisman, Lu Yi never thought about it. After all, they're not that familiar with each other. Moreover, the talismans of the humanoid spirit talismans are a rare commodity. There's no reason for him to take advantage of them. If not for this, Lu Yi wouldn't have come to Dapan Island at this time. If Yi didn't want to watch the show, he wouldn't even have come. Why is Brother Lu in the Wanxiang Sea? Yi Chaochuan asked curiously. After the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition, he'd asked Ri Zhao of the headquarters about Lu Ye's origins. He learned that the galaxy he came from was very remote. He shouldn't have the ability to communicate with the Wanxiang Sea. Therefore, when he saw Lu Yi today, he almost thought he'd mistaken him for someone else. It's a long story. Lu Yi sighed. After the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition, I returned to my domain. I was invaded by foreign enemies. When we fought, the space collapsed. I've just formed my insect path, so I came to the Wanxiang Sea. It's been a few years now. Yi Chaochuan understood. Is that so? Then Brother Lu has profited from a disaster. The Wanxiang Sea is a good place. Although the place is good, it's not easy to establish a foothold. End of chapter. Chapter 1767. Yi Chaochuan obviously knew a lot of information about the Wanxiang Sea. He nodded and said, "That's true. But someone as capable as Brother Lu can stand anywhere." He had personally experienced Lu Ye's power. Back then, he and Duan Xiuqun were both late constellation warriors, while Lu Yi was only early constellation warriors. Before the last Black Abyss martial arts exhibition, the Eastern Fangsuan Mountain always came in last place. First place was always decided by the Southern and Western tribes. But during the last exhibition, Lu Yi, an early constellation warrior, led a team from the East that wasn't very strong. He almost fought 1 against 2, killing them to the point they couldn't even fight back. Even Ri Zhao from the Southern and Western tribes was shocked. This was one of the reasons why Yi Chaochuan was so enthusiastic when he saw Lu Yi. If Lu Yi didn't do anything back then, he might have already forgotten about him. It could be said that the experience of the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition was something he would never forget. He naturally wanted to make friends with someone like Lu Yi. And this time, he found that Lu Yi already had Yu Yao. This cultivation speed was terrifying. As the two were talking, a figure suddenly barged into the shop and said, "Why did you call me here in such a hurry?" After speaking, the person was stunned. He stared at Lu Yi, who was sitting across from Yi Chaochuan with a shocked expression. Lu Yi was also stunned. He looked back at the other person. Both of them looked like they were dazed. Yaya stood to the side, looking at Lu Yi and then at the person. She seemed to find the two's expressions interesting and giggled. The person came back to his senses and was stunned. "Brother Lu." Lu Yi was also surprised. "Brother Duan?" The person who suddenly barged in was actually Duan Xiuqun from the south. To be honest, it wasn't strange to meet Yi Chaochuan here. They were passing by the Western Fangsuan Mountain this time. Yi Chaochuan was originally from the Western tribe. But seeing Duan Xiuqun here, Lu Yi couldn't understand. He suddenly realized that Yi Chaochuan said he had an old friend he wanted to meet. It wasn't one of the Western tribes he thought it was, but Duan Xiuqun. Duan Xiuqun stammered for a while. "You're in the Wanxiang Sea?" Lu Yi nodded. "I've been here for more than 10 years. Duan Xiuqun laughed heartily. He took a step forward and patted Lu Ye's shoulder. "What a coincidence. I was just mentioning you to old Yi a few days ago. I didn't expect to meet you so soon." You're Yueyao?" Lu Yi nodded. "Not too long ago. More than a year ago was indeed not that long." Duan Xiuqun glanced at Yi Chaochuan speechlessly. "What did I say? For someone like Brother Lu, his cultivation speed can't be too slow. If we're slow, we'll be left far behind sooner or later." Yi Chaochuan also revealed a helpless expression. "This is too fast." Duan Xiuqun said with a smile, "Junior Martial Brother Yi previously thought that you should still be a star constellation, and even said that if he had the fate to meet you one day, he would definitely regain his face. But now, it seems difficult." Yi Chaochuan snorted. "I wasn't the only one who lost face anyway." Duan Xiuqun obviously recalled the tragedy back then and said with a sigh, "After that battle, we were scolded so miserably by martial uncles. In the previous Black Abyss martial arts exhibition, regardless of whether it was the South or the West, their lineups were unprecedentedly strong. Just the late-stage star constellation alone had quite a few. In the end, the East, which was the weakest on the surface, took the lead. After the martial arts exhibition, the two divisions naturally harshly reprimanded the two leaders. The two of them were even punished because of this. "Brother Lu, you have to compensate us." Duan Xiuqun looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi nodded and said, "No problem. Once the two of you are done with your matters here, I'll bring you to my spiritual island for a tour. If you see anything you like, just let me know." Duan Xiuqun was shocked. "You've taken over a spiritual island in the Wanxiang Sea?" Yi Chaochuan was also shocked. Although he thought that Lu Yi would be able to gain a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea, he didn't expect that he had already reached the level of having the ability to take over a spiritual island. It should only be a low-level spiritual island, right? He heard that the competition in the Wanxiang Sea was very fierce. Without enough strength, it was impossible to take over a good spiritual island. Three-World Island. Now that there are many shops there, you can buy whatever you want. Duan Xiuqun and Yi Chaochuan looked at each other. They both realized that Lu Ye's spiritual island might be different from what they had imagined. A spiritual island with many shops, there would at least be a high-class spiritual island. It definitely couldn't be a low-class spiritual island. After a moment of silence, Duan Xiuqun asked, "Brother Lu, your spiritual island, how much authority do you have? Or is it that you're just here to guard it?" Lu Yi answered honestly, "Three-World Island is a spiritual island that is jointly taken over by the local galaxy. I don't really manage it, but everyone is willing to listen to me." Duan Xiuqun and Yi Chaochuan immediately understood. Over at Three-World Island, Lu Yi probably had the final say. This was really his spiritual island. "Are you here to trade this time?" Yi Chaochuan asked. "But the other two senior brothers and sisters are handling it. Let them come over. Brother Duan and I will talk to them," Yi Chaochuan suggested. Duan Xiuqun nodded. Lu Yi asked, "Is it appropriate?" Duan Xiuqun smiled. "What's not appropriate? It's the same no matter who we trade with. Outsiders are not as reliable as family. Later on, we still need to purchase some resources. We will go to Three-World Island to take a look. We won't let you lose out, and I believe you won't let us lose out either." That was true. Lu Yi thought for a while, then took out a sound talisman to send a message to Tang Jun, asking him and Luan Xiaoa to come over. After a while, old Tang and Luan Xiaoa still hadn't arrived, but someone else did. "What's wrong? What's wrong? Why did you call me over in such a hurry?" A familiar voice entered his ears. Lu Yi turned around and was completely confused. When he saw Duan Xiuqun just now, Lu Yi couldn't understand why Duan Xiuqun from the south would appear here. But now, it was someone from the east who came. Haitang. Haitang must have rushed over. Her spiritual energy hadn't calmed down. When she entered the shop and saw Lu Yi, she was stunned. After a while, she reacted and exclaimed, "Ah? Senior brother Lu?" Lu Yi smiled and nodded. "Junior sister Haiying, long time no see." Seeing this, Yi Chaochuan and Duan Xiuqun couldn't help but frown. Duan Xiuqun said, "You two Dao companions are meeting. Why do you seem not very enthusiastic?" The reason why he said Lu Yi was one of them was undoubtedly because of Lu Yi and Haitang's relationship. Previously, he purposely asked about Lu Ye's position on the Three-World Island. After knowing that the Three-World Island was really Lu Ye's spiritual island, he immediately decided to make a deal with the Three-World Island. Just as he said, it was a trade no matter who it was. When family members had needs, they should prioritize family members. Outsiders should stand aside. Yi Chaochuan had sent a message to inform Duan Xiuqun and Haitang, but the situation after the two met was a little different from what he had expected. They weren't enthusiastic enough. Instead, they were polite. Lu Yi only reacted after he said this. Indeed, in name, he was Haitang's Dao companion. Back then, he had used this name to participate in the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition. But in reality, the two didn't have a close relationship. He knew this, Haitang knew, and Su Yuqing also knew. But others didn't know. Even the humanoid tribe in the eastern Fangsuan mountain didn't know. Under normal circumstances, Dao companions who met after a long separation shouldn't be so polite. But how could Lu Yi be too enthusiastic? Just as he was about to think of a way to divert Duan Xiuqun and Yi Chaochuan's attention, he saw Hai Tang rush to him with a red face. She plunged into his embrace and buried her burning face in his chest. Duan Xiuqun chuckled. That's right. This was the reaction that Dao companions should have when they met after a long separation. Lu Yi's here. Tang Jun's voice suddenly came from the door of the shop. After receiving Lu Ye's message, the two of them rushed over. But because the shops here didn't have a specific number, they didn't know which shop Lu Yi was in. They could only check one by one. Fortunately, the shop's door wasn't closed. When passing by, they could see the situation inside. In particular, compared to the bustling other shops, this one was empty. Moreover, there was a closed sign hanging at the door. This made Old Tang even more curious. He saw Lu Yi as expected. But what puzzled Old Tang was, Lu Yi was currently full of fragrant jade. What the hell was going on? At this moment, Luan Xiao poked her head in and looked inside. She couldn't help but be stunned. Soon, she looked at Lu Yi with disdain. As expected, there were no good men. Eating from the bowl and thinking about the pot. Hua Xi's situation was unknown, and Lu Yi was actually here to steal jade and fragrance. At this moment, Lu Ye's body stiffened. He looked over Hai Tang's shoulder and met Old Tang's and Luan Xiao's gazes. Old Tang gave him a thumbs up. It was great to be young. Luan Xiao's eyes were full of disdain and she looked away. This is a misunderstanding. Lu Yi screamed in his heart, but he couldn't explain anything. His expression stiffened. Duan Xiuqun walked over. You two must be the guardians of the Three-World Island? Old Tang nodded. I am Tang Jun, the External Affairs Elder of the Three-World Island. This is our island master, Luan Xiao. Duan Xiuqun smiled and cupped his fists. I am Duan Xiuqun from the dwarf tribe. Yi Chaochuan also bowed and introduced himself. Duan Xiuqun said warmly, Come, the two of you. Let's discuss the matter of the spirit talismans. After saying this, he walked out of the shop with Yi Chaochuan and closed the door. The four Yu Yao began to discuss in low voices in front of the shop. Tang Jun and Luan Xiao were still in a daze. They had seen a few Yu Yao from the dwarf tribe just now, but they hadn't been able to reach an agreement. This was because the other party's asking price was a little too high. It exceeded the Three-World Island's expectations. Moreover, the Yu Yao from the dwarf tribe had the mentality of a rare commodity worth hoarding. None of their attitudes were too good. They had never seen such a polite dwarf tribe before. As they listened, both Tang Jun and Luan Xiao's spirits were lifted. They never thought that such a good thing would fall on their heads. Chapter 1768. Inside the tightly shut shop, Lu Ye's body was slightly stiff. Hai Tang was still hugging him, her cheeks burning. She did have a good impression of Lu Yi. Moreover, it was Lu Yi who had rescued her from the ghost ship. That was a life-saving grace. Later, in the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition, Lu Yi had contributed greatly to the East's victory. But when it came to romantic feelings, Hai Tang really didn't have such thoughts. But there were some things that had to be concealed. Her vision suddenly met with a little person standing to the side. The little person was standing to the side, tilting her head and curiously sizing her up. Ah! Hai Tang hurriedly jumped out of Lu Ye's arms and stood up straight. She glanced at Yaya, then at Lu Yi and explained, Senior brother, don't misunderstand. Just now it was, I understand. Lu Yi nodded. Only then did Hai Tang exhale. Lu Yi looked at Yaya and said, Go outside and find your Auntie Luan. He had something to ask Hai Tang. Yaya's eyes turned. I want to find Auntie Hua. I haven't seen her in a long time. This child. Lu Ye's face darkened. How could he not hear the threat in Yaya's words? He glared at her and exhorted, Be good and stay here. Yaya sat to the side, looking very obedient, but her eyes kept darting between Lu Yi and Hai Tang. This child is... Hai Tang looked at Yaya suspiciously. She couldn't understand why Lu Yi had brought such a delicate little girl with him. Moreover, from the surface, she didn't have the slightest trace of cultivation. This was obviously a little inconceivable. After all, This was the Wanxiang Sea, not a realm. How could a child who had never cultivated survive? I picked her up, Lu Yi transmitted. Yaya is a little special. Haitang understood and didn't ask any more questions. Haitang, you and Duan Xiuchen? Why are you here? Lu Yi really couldn't understand why this was the case. He couldn't possibly say that the three clans of Mount Fangzuan had become one, and that there was no longer any distinction between East, South, and West. However, it's different this time. The western region passes by the Wanxiang Sea, so our eastern and southern regions didn't want to miss this opportunity. We paid a certain price and came to the western region from our headquarters on Mount Fangzhen. Of course, the stronger one is, the greater the price one has to pay. Therefore, those from the eastern and southern regions who came this time are basically constellations. After she finished speaking, she winked at Lu Yi. This is a secret of the lesser human tribe. No one in the outside world knows about it. After she finished speaking, she winked at Lu Yi. This is a secret of the human tribe. No one in the outside world knows about it. Lu Yi suddenly understood why Haitang and Duan Xiuchen had come with the western region's Mount Fangzuan. Mount Fangzuan was originally a whole, but for some reason, it had split into three and drifted around the starry sky. Even so, there was still an invisible connection between the various clans on Mount Fangzuan. This connection wouldn't even be broken by distance. The human tribe only needed to use some special means and pay a certain price to make the three clans communicate with each other. Normally, the human tribe wouldn't do this, but with such a rare opportunity to pass by the Wanxiang Sea, the eastern and southern regions naturally wanted to join in the fun. This was indeed a secret. Apart from the human tribe, no one else knew about it. At this moment, Haitang was telling this secret to Lu Yi without any reservations. Obviously, she didn't treat him as an outsider. Lu Yi more or less understood why the Minion tribe wanted to keep this matter a secret. Not to mention how valuable the Minion tribe was, the talismans they refined were incomparable to any other race. Just look at the various Minion mountains right now, all of them were fragments of supreme treasures from the starry skies. Who knew if someone was secretly plotting something? The strength of each Mount Fangzuan wasn't weak. Even the eastern region, which had the weakest foundation, had Su Yuqing, Qin Xianhai, and Wuxia. If someone really wanted to attack Mount Fangzuan, they would definitely send out a large number of sunshine experts to crush them with their strength. But if the enemy hiding in the dark only considered the strength of one Mount Fangzuan and launched an attack, there would definitely be a huge surprise. This secret was Mount Fangzuan's way of protecting itself. The three Mount Fangzuan seemed unrelated, but they were actually a trinity. But just as Haitang said, the human tribe wouldn't normally have direct contact with each other, but the Wanxiang Sea was too famous. When the western region passed by, the human tribe of the eastern and southern regions also wanted to join in. So after a discussion, the three sunshine tribes opened up a passage between the three Mount Fangzuan. That was why Haitang and Duan Xiuchen appeared here. Outsiders only thought that the human tribe was from Mount Fangzuan in the western region, but they didn't know that there was not only the western region, but also the other two tribes. "Senior brother, come with me," Haitang said, then suddenly stood up. "Where are we going?" Lu Yi asked. "You'll know when the time comes." Haitang kept him in suspense, then stood up and walked out. The door of the shop opened, and the two walked out. Yi Chaochuan, Duan Xiuchen, Luan Xiaoa, and Tang Jun were still discussing the details of the transaction at the door. Sensing that the two had appeared, they all turned to look at them. So fast. Duan Xiuchen had a shocked expression, but when he noticed the little girl beside Lu Yi, he suddenly realized that he must have misunderstood something. "Senior brothers, I'll bring senior brother Lu back," Haitang said. Yi Chaochuan didn't ask much and nodded. "Go ahead." Haitang immediately jumped up, and Lu Yi hurriedly followed. Yaya was already riding on his neck, her two small hands grabbing Lu Ye's ears, looking like she was telling him not to leave her behind. Looking at the two's departing figures, Tang Jun had a look of admiration. He couldn't understand, when did Lu Yi get in touch with the Miniman race? Just now, when Yi Chaochuan and Duan Xiuchen were discussing the talisman transaction with him, they gave the three-world island a great discount. That was something that he and Luan Xiao couldn't ask for even if they begged for it. If they didn't have a close relationship, how could the mini-man race give such a discount? He suddenly remembered that his old friend had died under a red talisman. And that red talisman was undoubtedly a red talisman from the mini-man race. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so powerful. Looking at it now, Lu Yi had already gotten in touch with the mini-man race at that time. But, since it was related to the mini-man race, why didn't Lu Yi come out to handle the talisman transaction this time? Instead, he kept asking him to find out which part of Minuscule Mountain it was. Tang Jun couldn't understand. No matter what, the three-world island would definitely return with great success in this Spirit Talisman Conference. Lu Yi followed behind Haitang, seeing her fly straight towards Minuscule Mountain. Thinking of what she said previously, Lu Yi suddenly became nervous. Haitang, Peak Master Su, wouldn't have come to the west too, right? Haitang turned to look at him and said faintly, "Does senior brother wish for Master to come?" "Why do you ask?" Lu Ye's eyes flashed. Haitang wanted to say something but stopped. Suddenly, she smiled and said, "Master is in the sunshine. If she came from the east, she would have to pay a huge price. Therefore, those who came from the east this time are basically all star mansions. Even Yu Yao didn't come." She paused and said in a low voice, "Master hasn't shown up much these few years. She seems to be different from before." Lu Yi felt extremely guilty and didn't know what to say. Moreover, looking at Haitang's attitude, it seemed as if she knew something. He asked tentatively, "Did something happen to Peak Master Su?" Haitang glanced at him again, a meaningful expression on her face. Then she shook her head and said, "Master didn't say, so I didn't dare to ask. It's just that ever since you left, Master hasn't shown up much. I'm guessing that it has something to do with Master using a secret technique to allow you to participate in the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition. That secret technique must have consumed a lot of Master's energy." Cough cough. Lu Yi couldn't catch his breath. Haitang must have guessed something. Her words were clearly pointing at him. Thinking about it, it wasn't strange. After all, Haitang was Su Yuqing's direct disciple. If there was anyone in this world who understood Su Yuqing the most, it would undoubtedly be Haitang. Back in the east, it was announced that Lu Yi and Haitang had become Dao companions. After cultivating together, Lu Yi was finally qualified to enter the Black Abyss. However, Haitang knew that this was only an excuse. There was nothing between her and Lu Yi, and nothing had happened between them. Su Yuqing told her that she would use a secret technique to allow Lu Yi to enter the Black Abyss. As for what kind of secret technique it was, Haitang didn't ask. She believed that her master had the ability to do so. However, the various changes in her master later made her suspicious. Did that secret technique really exist? If non-humans wanted to participate in the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition, they had to be tainted with the aura of the humans. Cultivating together was the most direct and convenient method. If that secret technique didn't exist, Haitang didn't want to think about it any further. However, she also didn't understand why her master would do such a thing. The only thing she couldn't deny was that her master had changed after Lu Yi left. Therefore, Haitang felt that Lu Yi was the key. As they spoke, they had already arrived outside Mount Fengxuan. Yu Yao from the west was guarding this place, but she obviously recognized Haitang. Although there weren't many humans here, there were still quite a few of them. As a direct disciple of Rizhao, Haitang had some reputation. Therefore, when they saw Haitang arrive, one of the Yu Yao couldn't help but reveal a curious expression. "Junior apprentice sister, why have you returned? This person is..." Haitang immediately introduced him. "Senior apprentice brother, this is my Dao companion." As she said this, she affectionately grabbed Lu Ye's arm with a smile. Yu Yao immediately revealed a shocked expression. She looked Lu Yi up and down. "He's the human who beat up Yi Chaochuan during the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition?" Haitang wore a proud expression. Yu Yao gave Lu Yi a deep look. "So it's you, kid?" Lu Yi hurriedly bowed. "Human Lu Yi greets senior apprentice brother." The other nodded. "No need to be so polite. Since you're Haitang's Dao companion, you're one of us. However, Kid, Yi Chaochuan isn't your opponent because he's useless. It doesn't mean that there's no one in the West who can match you. Yes, yes, yes. What else could Lu Yi say? He naturally agreed to whatever the other party said. End of chapter. Chapter 1769. After exchanging a few words with Yu Yao, Lu Yi was relieved that the other party had no intention of making things difficult for him. Soon, Lu Yi followed Haitang into Fangsuan Mountain. From the outside, Fangsuan Mountain looked like a floating continent that could be seen everywhere in the starry sky. However, once inside, one would realize that this was an entire world. Haitang did not stop as she led Lu Yi forward. Lu Yi asked, "Where are we going?" Haitang was silent for a while before she said, "Senior brother, I want to ask you to come back to the east with me." Lu Yi had already guessed that since the three divisions could travel between Fangsuan Mountain, they could definitely go to the east from here. "Of course, I won't force senior brother if you don't want to," Haitang added. Lu Yi remained silent. Haitang had said so much, and she was just short of telling him to go to the east to see Su Yuqing. As a direct disciple, Haitang actually did not want to and should not intervene in this matter, but she had seen the changes in her master. As a disciple, she was very worried that she could not help her master solve her problems. Now that there was such a rare opportunity, she did not want to miss it. Even if she was punished by her master later, she would act first and report later. She believed that Lu Yi would not refuse. As long as he had some sense of responsibility, Lu Yi naturally could not refuse. He followed behind Haitang silently. Not saying anything was already enough. After walking for a while, they arrived at a valley. There was a building that looked like an altar here. It was covered in complicated patterns, and Lu Yi could see the traces of void spirit patterns at a glance. Beside the altar, a figure was sitting. Sensing Lu Yi and Haitang's arrival, that person slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was like lightning. Although there was no aura, Lu Yi immediately understood that this person was Rizhao. The West's foundation was really strong. For Rizhao had shown up earlier, and one was left to guard the domain. There were at least 5 Rizhao here. Who knew if there were more Rizhao hiding? Haitang landed in front of the altar with Lu Yi and respectfully bowed, "Martial Uncle Zhang." At the same time, she transmitted her voice to Lu Yi. "This is Senior Uncle Zhang Kuan." Lu Yi followed suit and bowed. Zhang Kuan glanced at them and smiled. "Little Haitang, why did you come back? Did you sell out the talismans?" "No." Haitang replied, and then looked at Lu Yi angrily. "I met my Dao companion in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but he doesn't want to admit it. I'm going to bring him back to the east and have Master judge him." Lu Yi broke out in a cold sweat. Since when did he go back on his word? Haitang must be pointing at him again. Zhang Kuan's gaze turned cold. "Your Dao companion is that human from the Black Abyss martial arts competition last time. Encountering him in the 10,000 Elephant Sea is truly a small world. Do you want Martial Uncle to break his limbs?" Haitang jumped in fright and quickly waved her hand. "No need, no need, I'll take him to see Master. Master will make a decision for me." If she really beat Lu Yi, it would be too unfair. Zhang Kuan nodded. "That's true. This is your business after all. It's not good for me to overstep my boundaries. Since that's the case, come on up." Haitang hurriedly pulled Lu Ye's arm and took him to the altar. Zhang Kuan waved his hand and pieces of spirit crystals suddenly flew out and sneaked into the 4 corners of the altar. His magic power buzzed as he shouted, "The process may be a little uncomfortable, bear with it for a while." Haitang nodded. Disciple understands. She had already experienced it once when she came over from the east, and it wasn't a very good feeling. Zhang Kuan's magic power fluctuated, and the spirit crystals around the altar were consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into pure energy that poured into the altar. The entire altar began to buzz, and the void distorted. Lu Yi vaguely felt that this should be a kind of transmission similar to the insect path. However, because of the special nature of the Fangsuan Mountains and the connection between themselves, the 2 ends of the insect path were located in different parts of the Fangsuan Mountains. He had experienced this kind of transmission before. Previously, when he entered the Mist Dragon Palace from the Long Cloud Galaxy, it was a similar situation. The insect path was unstable, and the transmission gave people a very bad feeling. At this moment, Lu Yi had a similar feeling. His whole body seemed to be drunk, and the world was spinning. Haiteng, who was beside him, was not much better. Her face was slightly pale, and her body seemed to be a little unstable. Suddenly, Zhang Kuen's angry roar sounded, and his magic power fluctuated more and more fiercely. Suddenly, the spatial distortion on the altar disappeared. As Zhang Kuen's magic power calmed down, the chaotic space returned to normal. On the altar, Lu Yi and Haiteng were still standing there. Haiteng was puzzled because Zhang Kuen was still standing in front of her. This meant that the transmission was not successful this time. "Uncle Master, what's wrong?" Haiteng asked, puzzled. Zhang Kuen only stared at Yaya, who was riding on Lu Ye's neck, and said, "Kid, what's wrong with this little girl?" He did not see anything strange about Yaya, so he did not pay too much attention to it. However, when he wanted to send Lu Yi and Haiteng to the Fangsuan Mountains in the east, he realized that something was wrong. For such a transmission, the higher the cultivation of the person being transmitted, the greater the price they had to pay. Under normal circumstances, it would not be too difficult for Zhang Kuen to transmit one Yu Yao and one constellation. However, the transmission just now felt that it was not just one Yu Yao and one constellation. There was actually a Rizhao among them. Zhang Kuen immediately understood that the problem was with the little girl who looked normal. "What's wrong with her?" Haiteng was puzzled. Zhang Kuen said indifferently, "She's Rizhao." Haiteng was stunned, almost thinking that Zhang Kuen had made a mistake. However, Zhang Kuen was also Rizhao, and the transmission just now did not succeed. This undoubtedly meant that something was wrong. Lu Yi was stunned for a moment, then he transmitted his voice to Zhang Kuen, informing him of Yaya's situation. After learning that Yaya was indeed a Rizhao expert, but her spirit sea was damaged by the soul-devouring aphid, causing her to lose her mind and behave like an ordinary child, Zhang Kuen could not help but sigh. He was also a Rizhao expert, but he felt that if he fell into Yaya's situation he would rather die. At least he would have a quick death. After a moment of silence, Zhang Kuen said, "The price of transmitting Rizhao is too high. You should leave the little girl here." Yaya immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. "I don't want to, I want to be with Daddy." The corner of Zhang Kuen's eyes twitched. He looked at Lu Yi with uncertainty. "What did she call you?" Lu Yi smiled bitterly. Uncle Master did not hear wrong. When she opened her eyes, she saw me, so, Zhang Kuen sighed. Forget it. I'll send you both over." A Rizhao calling Yu Yao Daddy, this was simply a fantasy. "Thank you, Uncle Master." Zhang Kuen began to channel his transcendence energy again. This time he did not stop. After a short while, the space above the altar was distorted to the extreme. When it calmed down again, Lu Yi and the other two had disappeared. Zhang Kuen's face was slightly pale, as if he had fought with someone. He quickly sat down cross-legged and took out spirit crystals to recover his transcendence energy. After dispelling all the discomfort, Lu Yi looked up and realized that the figure in front of him was no longer Zhang Kuen, but Chen Xianhai from the east. Under his feet was an altar similar to the one he saw before. Chen Xianhai was obviously guarding it. "Lu Yi?" Chen Xianhai undoubtedly remembered Lu Yi, but he was still puzzled by his sudden appearance here with Haiteng. "Uncle Master Chen." Lu Yi and Haiteng bowed together. "Why did you come from the west?" Chen Xianhai asked. Haiteng explained for Lu Yi, and Chen Xianhai finally understood. "Then you brought him here this time for?" Chen Xianhai looked at Haiteng. "To pay respects to Master." This time, Haiteng didn't mention anything about eating up, so as to avoid Chen Xianhai breaking Lu Ye's arms and legs. Chen Xianhai nodded slightly. "Indeed, you should go and see junior sister Su." Haiteng blinked her eyes. From her perspective, she brought Lu Yi here to pay respects to Master. But Uncle Master Chen actually said that Lu Yi should go and see Master. Paying respects and seeing are two different things. The former is a junior meeting an elder, while the latter is between peers. Haitang suddenly realized that Uncle Master Chen might know something. Otherwise, why would he say that? Suppressing the urge to ask, Haitang said, Uncle Master, we'll return to the Immortal Spirit Peak first. We'll have to trouble Uncle Master Chen to send us back later. Don't worry about it. Qin Xianhai waved his hand. Haitang took out her planetary boat and flew towards the Immortal Spirit Peak with Lu Yi and Yaya. Along the way, Lu Yi looked up and couldn't help but think back to more than 10 years ago. At that time, he had just been promoted to Constellation Mansion, and like the other Constellation Mansions of the 9 prefectures, he began to explore the surrounding space. In the end, he encountered a lot of things the first time he left the 9 prefectures. He also thought of Feng Rumo, who was being chased by that flying sword. He wondered how that senior was doing now. At that time, it was because of this senior's guidance that he was able to find the Spectre ship. The planetary boat swept through the sky, and Haitang was very silent. At this point, she didn't know whether she was doing the right thing, but there was no turning back. She hoped that she wasn't wrong. Soon, they arrived at the Immortal Spirit Peak. Haitang led Lu Yi to the front of a large hall with ease, and then called out, Master. After a few breaths, Su Yuqing's voice came from the hall. What's the matter? Haitang pursed her lips and said, Disciple and Dao companion Lu Yi are here to pay respects to Master. The moment she finished speaking, both Haitang and Lu Yi clearly felt that Su Yuqing's aura in the hall became chaotic for a moment. This further confirmed Haitang's suspicions all these years. Urgently, a faintly discernible divine sense spread out from the inside of the hall. It was clearly checking the situation outside. After a while, Su Yuqing's voice sounded again, Go to the Immortal Shadow Palace. Haitang signaled to Lu Yi with her eyes and led him to the side. Inside the Immortal Shadow Palace, Lu Yi sat and waited. After a while, a figure slowly walked out. Looking up, Lu Yi saw a figure in snow-white clothes, with her hair tied up in a high bun, and a few black waterfall-like strands of hair falling down her cheeks. She had a dignified temperament, but also a bit of purity. Compared to the last time they met, Lu Yi suddenly found that Su Yuqing seemed to have gained some indescribable charm. Haitang stared at her master in a daze. Although she didn't dress up too much, as a direct disciple, she could tell at a glance that her master had carefully taken care of her appearance before she appeared. There really was something between master and senior brother Lu. End of chapter. Chapter 1770. In the Celestial Shadow Palace, Su Yuqing walked to her seat and sat down. Haitang bowed. Master. Lu Yi also cupped his fists. Peak Master Su. Haitang's heart was as clear as a mirror when she heard Lu Yi address her like this. She was even more certain that she was right. Normally, senior brother Lu should call Master Senior. Peak Master Su's address was not right. Su Yuqing responded softly. She glanced at the two of them and asked curiously, Why did you two come back together? She could understand why Haitang would come back. This time, the western region passed by the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Apart from Haitang, some other star mansions from the eastern region had gone to the western region to participate in the Spirit Talisman Convention. Once the convention ended, the people from the eastern region would naturally come back. However, she could not understand why Lu Yi would come here. Looking at the young face below, even though Su Yuqing had deliberately forgotten some things in the past, many deeply buried memories could not help but surge up. She had thought that they would never meet again after she had sent him back to his homeland. That parting would also be an eternal farewell. Who would have thought that they would meet again after a short 10 years? Master, senior brother is at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. We met at the Spirit Talisman Convention, Haitang explained excitedly. The starry sky was so vast that such a chance encounter was undoubtedly a kind of fate. You're at the 10,000 Elephant Sea? Su Yuqing looked at Lu Yi in surprise. She naturally knew how far the Jade Snail Galaxy was from the 10,000 Elephant Sea. That place was so remote that there was not even a single insect path. Therefore, she was surprised that Lu Yi was at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Moreover, in a short decade, Lu Ye's cultivation had advanced from the early stage of the star mansions to Yu Yao's level. Although she did not know what Lu Yi had experienced in the past decade, it seemed that he had suffered a lot. The growth of a cultivator was always related to the hardships they experienced. The faster they grew, the more hardships they would have to face. In an instant, Su Yuqing seemed to have seen many things. Her originally cold gaze softened a little. Yes, I encountered some things back then and accidentally came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Lu Yi explained casually without going into too much detail. The 10,000 Elephant Sea is a good place. Su Yuqing nodded. It's also a place suitable for cultivators to work hard. If you can make a name for yourself here, it won't be a problem for you to stand out. After exchanging a few words, Su Yuqing used the tone of an elder to give Lu Yi some pointers. Lu Yi had a respectful look on his face as he nodded repeatedly. As she spoke, Su Yuqing suddenly looked at Yaya curiously. This little girl is, as always, Yaya introduced herself crisply, I am Daddy's daughter. Su Yuqing was taken aback, and her eyes turned cold. The temperature of the entire Immortal Shadow Palace seemed to have dropped quite a bit. There was killing intent. The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. He immediately knew that something was wrong. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Hai Tang hurriedly transmitted a message to Su Yuqing, Master, Yaya was picked up by senior brother, and she was originally a sunshine. Because her divine sea was broken by the soul-devouring aphid, her divine sea was damaged, and now her spiritual intelligence is only at the level of a child. Hearing this, Su Yuqing carefully looked at Yaya for a while and did not see the slightest falsehood in her eyes. Thinking about it, if she was really an ordinary child, it would be impossible for her to live with Lu Yi in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. At this moment, Hai Tang stood up and said, Master, disciples' talismans are almost sold out. It's rare for me to come back, so I'll go to the other senior brothers to see if there are any extra talismans. After saying this, she waved at Yaya. Yaya, come with me. Yaya decisively refused. No, I want to be with Daddy. Lu Yi patted Yaya's little head. Sister Hai Tang has a lot of delicious food, all of which you have never seen or eaten. Yaya suddenly jumped down from the chair and enthusiastically threw herself at Hai Tang. Sister Hai Tang? Hai Tang did not know whether to laugh or cry. She called Lu Yi senior brother, Yaya called Lu Yi daddy, and now she called her sister Hai. If this seniority was from Master's side, there seemed to be no problem, but it was a bit messy. Hai Tang let her imagination run wild. She picked up Yaya and bowed to leave. Immediately, only Lu Yi and Su Yuqing were left in the Immortal Shadow Palace. Lu Yi looked up and met Su Yuqing's gaze. The latter's eyes dodged for a moment, and she was still a little flustered. When Hai Tang was here, she could still put on the airs of an elder and show some concern for Lu Ye's experiences over the years. But now that Hai Tang and Yaya were gone, she suddenly did not know what position to talk to Lu Yi in. Lu Yi also did not know what to say. After Su Yuqing personally escorted him and Nian Yu Xian back to the vicinity of 9 regions, not only did Su Yuqing feel that there was no possibility of meeting again in this life, but even Lu Yi also felt the same. Unless one day the eastern Fangsuan mountain passed through the Jade Snail Galaxy, and Su Yuqing would take the initiative to visit him. So he never thought that the 10,000 Elephant Sea would be another intersection point between them. The atmosphere became a little awkward and torturous. Su Yuqing's hands and her sleeves were sweating. This situation was more difficult than refining a red talisman for her. In the end, it was Lu Yi who broke the silence. Hai probably knows. What? Su Yuqing was startled, and then her expression was extremely flustered. She asked, what does she know? What did she say to you? Lu Yi sighed, stood up, and walked toward Su Yuqing. As his figure approached, Su Yuqing's expression became more and more flustered. She involuntarily pinched the armrest of the chair with a nervous expression. What are you doing? Where was the majesty and bearing that Rizhao should have? She looked like a little girl who was ignorant of the world and encountered something that made her panic and panic. Her first reaction was to avoid it instead of facing it head-on. Lu Yi didn't say anything. His gaze was fixed on her beautiful face. In such a situation, he did not know what to do, but no matter what he did, it was better than the two of them staying here in awkward silence. Su Yuqing was Rizhao, and her cultivation base was much higher than his, but after all, she was a woman. There were some things that he needed to take responsibility for. After a dozen steps, Lu Yi soon came in front of Su Yuqing and looked at her condescendingly. The woman in front of him was so nervous that her beautiful eyes were almost unfocused. Her chest was violently rising and falling, and her white cheeks were beginning to turn red. Her mind could not help but recall various things that happened more than 10 years ago. Her entire body was stiff as if she had been struck by a talisman. Until Lu Ye's large hand pinched her smooth chin, Su Yuqing's body shook as if she had been electrocuted. Hand away. Su Yuqing's gaze looked past Lu Yi and out of the hall, afraid that a disciple of the Immortal Spirit Peak would pass by. If someone passed by at this time and saw this scene, she would definitely lose her dignity. Her childish words made Lu Yi laugh. In terms of cultivation base, Su Yuqing was much higher than him. At this moment, she could casually use her magic power to shake him off. But there was no sign of her magic power circulating. Instead, she pretended to be fierce and shouted such words without any deterrence. Lu Yi felt that something in his body had suddenly awakened. The appearance of the woman in front of him made his blood boil. His big hand touched the woman's cheek and gently stroked it. Lu Yi said in a deep voice, "Haitang didn't say too much, but her words implied that I'm a bad person who doesn't admit anything. She said that since I left that year, you've become different. So she brought me here this time, probably to let me enlighten and comfort you." Su Yuqing was trembling. Not only were her cheeks red, even her fair neck was beginning to turn red. She looked up at Lu Yi. Her instincts told her that the wisest thing to do at this moment was to use her transcendence energy to shake Lu Yi off, to let him know the price of offending his superiors. But every time she made this decision, she couldn't bring herself to do it. Her pure magic power seemed to have solidified in her body and could not circulate. She suddenly remembered that when she was still young, there was once when she went deep into the ancient forest and met a monster that bared its fangs and pushed her to the ground. The situation at that time was very similar to today. In her vision, Lu Yi also seemed to have turned into that monster that bared its fangs and wanted to eat her flesh and bones. She did not know why she would think of this scene from a long time ago, but she could not help it. Lu Ye's voice sounded again, pulling her back from her distant thoughts. "I don't know how to comfort you. You are sunshine after all. You have more experience than me and your mind is also more tenacious than mine. If you can't understand something, no matter how others try to persuade you, it will be useless. So sometimes it is better to do than to say." What? Su Yuqing was completely stunned. Lu Ye's words entered her left ear and came out of her right ear. She did not have the ability to think at all. She only heard Lu Yi say that it was better to do than to say, and then saw his body crouching down. The long-awaited blazing breath hit her in the face. Su Yuqing suddenly woke up and finally knew what she should do. She gritted her teeth and used all her strength. Lu Ye's movements paused for a moment, knowing that his lips were broken, but he did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Insincere resistance became meaningless at this moment. A moment later, Su Yuqing's pure sunshine magical power finally surged out, but it did not push Lu Yi away. Instead, it turned into a layer of protection, covering the entire Immortal Shadow Palace. With a bang, the main door of the palace closed. At the same time, Haitang, who was looking for delicious food with Yaya on another spiritual peak, suddenly sensed something and turned her head in the direction of the Immortal Shadow Palace. There was a look of worry on her face. The fluctuations of Sunshine's magical power were very obvious. She did not know what was going on in the Immortal Shadow Palace, but she knew that Master must have made a move. Senior brother won't be beaten, right? Will he be beaten very badly? However, as long as Master vented her anger, he should be fine. She believed that even if Master really did make a move on Lu Yi, she would certainly have a sense of propriety and would not really do anything to him. Comforting herself like this, Haitang suppressed the idea of going to the Immortal Shadow Palace to investigate the situation. She decided to let nature take its course and not interfere. She had done the only thing she could do, and that was to bring Lu Yi back. "Sister Haitang, where's the delicious food?" Yaya's voice sounded from the side. Haitang came back to her senses. "Come with me, little greedy cat. I'll take you to find it. There are a lot of delicious things here on Mount Fengxuan. I guarantee that you've never eaten them outside." End of chapter. Chapter 1771. Inside the Immortal Shadow Palace, a fragrant couch had appeared at some point, surrounded by a green veil that covered the scenery inside. There were some strange smells floating in the hall. On the fragrant couch, Lu Yi was lying horizontally in his arms, while Su Yuqing was curled up in his arms like a kitten. It had been 3 days since the doors of the Immortal Shadow Palace closed. For 3 whole days, there had been no verbal communication, but Lu Yi felt that his advice should have had some results. This could be seen from the reaction of Su Yuqing's body. He had paid a great price, and it could be said that he had worked hard and made great contributions. On his chest, her long eyelashes fluttered a few times, and the curled-up figure moved. "You're awake." Lu Yi looked down. He met Su Yuqing's gaze and saw her pursing her lips into a smile. There was not much coyness. What should have happened had already happened, and it was under the premise that she was conscious. At this point, there was naturally no need to avoid anything. If it were a little girl who was not familiar with the ways of the world, she would probably be very embarrassed at this moment. Haitang misunderstood. Su Yuqing did not get up and spoke for the first time in 3 days. "What do you mean?" "She said that since you left, I have become different. In fact, it's not because of you, but because I am repairing my secret technique." With Su Yuqing's explanation, Lu Yi understood that Haitang had really misunderstood. She thought that the change in her master had something to do with Lu Yi, so after seeing Lu Yi this time, she brought him over to enlighten her master. In her opinion, whoever started the trouble should end it. But in fact, this was not the case. Su Yuqing was after all a sunshine person, and her heart was tenacious. That day when they parted, she had already mentally prepared herself to never see each other again. She would not indulge in love and could quickly adjust her mentality. If she could not even do this well, she would not have been able to cultivate to the level of sunshine. All these years, she had lived in seclusion and often went into seclusion to repair her secret technique. Back then, her secret technique was broken by Lu Yi, and she had suffered some losses, but she could not bear to give up that secret technique. After all, she had cultivated it for many years, so she needed to repair it. In the end, in Haitang's opinion, her master was hurt by love. After hearing this, Lu Yi understood and said, "No matter what, I still have to thank Haitang." "What are you thanking me for?" Su Yuqing leaned on Lu Ye's body, her hand under her chin as she looked at him. Lu Yi raised her hand and pinched her cheek. "Thank you for bringing me here. I can see you again." Su Yuqing's eyes flashed. "You really want to see me?" Lu Yi didn't answer. Instead, she revealed a thoughtful expression. "You're different this time." "What's different?" Su Yuqing asked. Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "Last time, you were very cold. This time, you're not so cold. It seems like you're looking forward to it." Last time, even though they had a physical relationship, Su Yuqing's attitude towards Lu Yi did not change much. It was obviously different from this time. Su Yuqing did not deny it. She smiled and said, "Because there is something worth looking forward to." She lay down and leaned her head on Lu Ye's shoulder. She said slowly, "Last time, you were only at the early stage of the constellation realm. In the galaxy, there are too many cultivators who have just entered the constellation realm, and you were unwilling to stay on Minuscule Mountain to cultivate. After that farewell, who knows if we'll meet again in the future? Who knows if you'll die somewhere? But now, you're already a Yu Yao. In this galaxy, you have some ability to protect yourself. Your aptitude is extremely good, and your cultivation speed is so fast. Sooner or later, you'll reach sunshine. If that's the case, even if I'm on Minuscule Mountain and you're somewhere else, there will be a time when we meet again." Lu Yi roughly understood the reason behind her change in attitude. It was indeed as she said. An early-stage constellation realm cultivator who was unwilling to stay on minuscule mountain to cultivate, who knew when she would suddenly die. So back then, Su Yuqing did not dare to have any expectations. But after more than a decade, the early-stage constellation realm cultivator was now a Yu Yao, and she was even at the middle stage of the Yu Yao realm. At this rate, sunshine would not be a problem. At that time, no matter how far apart they were, given their long lifespans, there would always be a chance to meet again. It could be said that the current Su Yuqing dared to have expectations for the future. How should we deal with Haitang? Lu Yi asked. Although Haitang had gotten some things wrong, she had also discovered the truth by accident. If Lu Yi was not her Dao companion, she would not have cared too much about it. However, he was still Haitang's Dao companion. Now that he was fooling around with Su Yuqing, she still had to give her an explanation. Su Yuqing said, "I'll talk to her. I won't hide anything from her." The main thing was that Chen Xianhai and Wu Qima had already guessed this. She could hide it from the others on Minuscule Mountain, but she definitely could not hide it from these two Sunshine Realm cultivators. Since the two of them already knew, she felt that there was no need to hide anything from Haitang. Lu Yi nodded. Su Yuqing changed the topic and said, "I remember that during the Black Abyss martial arts exhibition competition, you were able to display the strength of a late-stage constellation realm cultivator with your early-stage constellation realm cultivation. Now that you're a middle-stage Yu Yao, how will you fare against a late-stage Yu Yao?" You want to ask whether my current strength is superficial or not. Lu Yi instantly understood Su Yuqing's meaning. A cultivator's strength was directly related to their cultivation level, but it was not a decisive factor. That's right. Lu Ye's eyes flashed. Words are no proof. Why don't you experience it yourself? Su Yuqing was slightly taken aback. In the next instant, her face flushed red, and her voice trembled. You want me to experience it like this? In the end, Su Yuqing still personally experienced Lu Ye's strength, in terms of true combat. Using a spirit talisman, she transformed it into an independent space and suppressed her strength to that of a late-stage Yu Yao. Then she exchanged blows with Lu Yi in this space. The result was shocking. She originally thought that since Lu Ye's cultivation had increased so quickly, her foundation would definitely be unstable, and she might not be able to display her full strength. However, after exchanging blows with her, she was shocked to find that Lu Yi, a middle-stage Yu Yao, was stronger than all the other Yu Yao she had seen before. With her Sunshine Realm cultivation, she suppressed her strength to that of a late-stage Yu Yao. However, she was still not a match for Lu Yi. This was undoubtedly an inconceivable matter, but it was the truth. The space formed by the spirit talisman dissipated, and Lu Yi put away her mountain pan saber. She looked at Su Yuqing and said, "If you need my help, feel free to ask." Su Yuqing replied, "No, why are you suddenly asking?" Lu Yi looked straight into her eyes and said, "You want to test my strength for no reason. It's obvious that you have something you need me to do." Su Yuqing remained silent. "Is it very dangerous?" Lu Yi asked. Otherwise, she wouldn't have reacted like this. Su Yuqing nodded hesitantly. Lu Yi smiled and said, "Tell me about it. If it's too dangerous, I can choose not to go." Su Yuqing said, "Let's sit down and talk." After a short while, the two of them sat down. Su Yuqing took out a tea set and began to personally brew tea. As she worked, she said, "Everyone knows that Mount Fangsuan is now divided into 3 parts. It's even rumored that the division of Mount Fangsuan is related to a battle with the Blood Tribe." It's not related? It is indeed related. In the beginning, Mount Fangsuan was actually a whole entity. It was a supreme treasure of the starry sky that gave birth to our race of mini-humans. No one knows how many years it had existed in the starry sky until one day, an extremely powerful existence set his eyes on Mount Fangsuan and wanted to seize it. That existence called himself the Blood Ancestor, and he had many Blood Tribe members under his command. Blood Ancestor. Lu Yi immediately thought of the blood refinement realm outside the 9 states. If he wasn't mistaken, that was the Blood Ancestor's body. After a great battle, Mount Fangsuan was barely able to hold on, but it was also divided into 3 parts. Moreover, in this battle, Mount Fangzhuan also lost the most important part of its core. This is also the fundamental reason why the three parts of Mount Fangzhuan haven't been able to reunite. Lu Yi listened seriously. He really didn't know about this. In the entire starry sky, there probably weren't many people who knew about this. This was definitely a secret of the mini-humans. It was only now that his relationship with Su Yuqing had progressed and he had enough strength that he could hear these things from her. For countless years, the three parts of the mini-humans have been thinking of ways to reunite Mount Fangzhuan. Unfortunately, the core is missing and there's no hope at all. Now, there's only one way to restore Mount Fangzhuan's past glory. Retrieve the core? Lu Yi asked. Su Yuqing nodded, took out a teacup and poured him a cup. Lu Yi was slightly puzzled. The three parts of Mount Fangzhuan have a lot of sunlight. Is there no way to retrieve the core? Or are you saying that you don't know where the core is? We've always known the location of the core because the three parts of Mount Fangzhuan have a certain pattern in their trajectory. Although this pattern is very complicated, after so many years of studying this pattern, we've long determined the location of the core. Lu Yi understood. In other words, the three parts of Mount Fangzhuan have always been drifting around the core? That's generally the case, but the trajectory of Mount Fangzhuan isn't fixed. Su Yuqing nodded. Since that's the case, can't you just go and retrieve the core directly? Lu Yi was even more puzzled. Su Yuqing smiled bitterly. If it were that simple, we wouldn't have waited for so many years. The core is located in a starry sky wonder. You should know that many starry sky wonders have their own uniqueness. The starry sky wonder where the core is located has a very big restriction, and that is that sunlight can't enter. Lu Yi understood. He could be considered to have seen many starry sky wonders, so he naturally knew that some starry sky wonders were strange and unique. Following Su Yuqing's explanation, Lu Yi gradually understood. So you want me to go and find the core of Mount Fangzhuan? To the mini-humans, this was a big deal. If they could really retrieve the core from the starry sky wonder, then the three parts of Mount Fangzhuan would no longer need to be separated and could be reunited as one. At that time, their strength would definitely increase greatly, and with the foundation of Mount Fangzhuan's starry sky treasure, it wouldn't be a problem for them to become a top-grade domain. Now, although the various parts of Mount Fangzhuan were famous, it wasn't a top-grade domain. The reason was because the core was missing, causing the various parts to split up and their strength to be scattered. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.